Hello, everyone, and welcome to ReelTok episode 54. We have 3 guests with us today from the Looks Like a Movie podcast. We got Kevin, a.k.a. K Meeks, Doug, a.k.a. Reservoir Doug's, and Mr. Owen Hates Movies himself on the podcast this week. We got a fun episode for y'all, so we're recording this a week ahead of time because I'll be out of time next weekend, so we're kind of batching up some episodes. So right now when you're listening to this, we're 2 hours away from the kickoff of football season, NFL season, so we're all pretty amped about that, except maybe Seth and George. But I think the Looks Like Movie Pod boys are certified NFL fans.
I'm clapping Cam in fantasy this week.
Yeah, we're all of us are in the Film Talk Fantasy Football League, so high stakes going down today once the season kicks off. But yeah, today we got a fun episode. We're gonna be going over M. Night Shyamalan. It's like an M. Night Shyamalan special. Gonna go over his entire filmography, and then gonna kind of end it off with just some interesting stuff to pick the brains of the Looks Like a Movie pod guys, because truly you guys like have such a unique take on films and like have really opened my eyes and stuff, and like messaging you guys and talking with you guys has been super great for me. Like I've just learned so much from you all. And yeah, I just kind of want to go over, I kind of put it in as like the great movie debate, high versus low scores, but it's not a debate because I'm of the opinion where like no one should ever have to justify like a high or low rating for a movie because it's just like art and it's subjective. So it's not like a debate, but it's just going to be like interesting to hear like movies you guys rate super high that maybe some of us rate super low or vice versa, and just kind of talk about like maybe what's the reasoning, which it doesn't have to be some like analytical thing. It can literally just be like, yeah, it's just not a movie I enjoy, you know, just as simple as that.
We'll get there
to
talk about M. Night.
Yeah,
we will certainly get that.
I'm sure this will be a very tame conversation.
Yeah,
absolutely.
And then I just want to pick your guys' brains on what your favorites of the year and kind of least favorites of the year are, which kind of like just get a gauge of the guests we have on to see kind of what their favorites of 2023 so far have been. So that's the episode today. So we're obviously going to kick it off with the M. Night filmography, but first I just want to kick it over to you guys for introducing yourself. So, I mean, I gave you a quick little spiel, but like maybe favorite movie or director of yours, not like, you know, just like a quick little, you know, type of stuff like first day of class. We're going around the room, say a little fun fact.
Plug
Who
your
are
pod
you?
too. Plug the pod.
Yeah,
tell
plug
us where
your
we can find
pod. Plug us where you can find you. All that nonsense. We'll start off with K Meeks.
Yeah, saying first day of class makes me think of all the times that I had to name my favorite movie on the first day of film classes, and everybody gave me a look when I said 10 Things I Hate About You. It's still 10 Things I Hate About You.
It's a great movie.
Yeah, big romance guy over here. My TikTok is K Meeks Film. My letterboxd is just K Meeks.
Favorite director,
I guess.
director.
My favorite
Yeah,
director.
favorite director.
I don't really have one.
Just
I
name
guess,
the
like,
first one that comes to your head.
Bong Joon-ho, Spike Lee, maybe.
Yeah,
I
There you
thought
go.
it's Spike Lee. I thought you'd say that. Yeah, that's fair.
Yeah.
Real game.
Where are you based out of? If you don't have to say, if you don't want to dox yourself.
I'm based out of New Jersey.
Jersey. Okay.
I'll tweet his address out later.
Everybody make fun of New Jersey now. Now's the time.
No. We'll make fun of you when you say that it's better than New York. No, you.
Right. It is, but that's a conversation for another time. I don't want to get George riled up yet.
Probably one of the few things you and Alex Coleman have in common.
Yeah.
Being from New
Yeah.
Jersey.
He's very New Jersey, by the way.
New
I'm not very New Jersey. He's very New Jersey.
Bro, every time he comes to New York, the only thing he's doing is complaining about New York. That's it. That's all he does.
Yeah.
Doug.
Hello. My name's Doug. My @ on Letterboxd is Doug Holler.
Wait, it's not Reservoir Dogs anymore? You changed it?
No,
That's-
that's TikTok. That's TikTok.
Yeah,
Oh,
it's
Letterboxd,
that's
Letterboxd,
just
yeah.
TikTok. My favorite movie is The Piano Teacher. My favorite director is Ingmar Bergman. I also like Terrence Malick. I also like other guys. I like M. Night. M. Night's up there too. I'm based out of Omaha. I'm a host of the Looks Like a Movie podcast.
Yeah, which just to pimp your guys' pod even more. So, God, it's probably been a while now, but both Seth and I have guest starred on it. But it's been probably, I don't know, because I was on for Air, which is like half a year ago at this point.
I was on for Twixt.
Yeah.
Interesting
Yeah.
film.
Yeah, our most listened to episode is
Twix.
Stop talking about Twix.
That's funny.
Really.
Owen, how about you?
So I'm a sophomore.
In high school.
Yeah, in high school. I like lunch and gym.
Favorite lunch.
Favorite lunch. The pizza here is really good.
That's probably not true.
No, it's not.
It's
It's
not.
No way.
Not true. I don't know. M Night's definitely up there. Like if we're not gonna talk about M Night, Brian De Palma is someone that I really like. I kind of did this recently, for class, and everyone was talking about the Ahsoka show, and I mentioned Harmony Korine's Trash Humpers, which got a couple looks.
Weirdest film. The weirdest film.
Yeah, I don't know. I like a lot of stuff we're going to talk about today, but one random thing I can pull. Oh, I guess Jerry. I can talk about Jerry. I really like Jerry. Gus Van Sant's Jerry.
Well, don't you only have one 5-star film on Letterboxd? I feel like you gotta mention that.
Two.
Oh, two.
It's Jerry and An American Werewolf in
American
London.
Werewolf.
Okay. Yeah, because I remember Jerry on your first watch was a 4.5, but I forgot you elevated it to a 5.
Yeah. Well, like I think I saw American Werewolf like 6 times before I gave it 5 stars, and then Jerry
you
was
watched that a
something
lot.
like that. Yeah. Like I'm not
had to make sure.
Yeah. Well, I'm not. I don't know. I rate things weirdly.
Yeah.
Oh, you
Yeah,
don't
you do.
say.
You don't say.
Which we'll get into at the later point of the
I'm
podcast.
reinventing the system.
We'll get into M Night's filmography now. So I thought instead of doing because basically the way we've normally done director rankings on here is we all go around and kind of give like our 10 through 6 and go 5, 4, 3. But I feel like that's not the best way to actually discuss the movies, because then we have someone in their 6th spot talking about one movie that someone's gonna talk about the 2, and it's just like fragments discussion. So I think we just roll through M Night's filmography from beginning to present, just going movie by movie and talking about it, and then we'll kind of, and then at the very end, once we finish up, all the way through Knock at the Cabin, we'll kind of go around and kind of say like what our rankings are from like whatever to, because I don't think all of us have completed the filmography completely. He has 2 earlier films, well, especially Praying with Anger is a more niche film that definitely not a lot of people have seen, whereas Wide Awake's is a movie a lot of people kind of forget about. But yeah, so M Night's filmography. We'll start off with Praying with Anger. Probably going to go a little quicker here. From 1992, technically his debut. He was probably I think 22 when he wrote this, directed this, and acted in it.
I think he was younger, straight up.
Even younger, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So who here has seen it? I know I watched it 2 days ago.
I think it's just me and you, gamer.
Okay. So what do you have it rated? I didn't think I saw it on your Letterboxd.
I think I gave it 2.5. Let me see.
Yes. Okay. You gave it 2.5, which is the same as I gave it actually.
Yeah. It's not a bad movie, but it's like it's like a micro budget movie about a kid going to India. It's fine. It's okay. It's like there's it's so it's very much like, oh, this is like a guy that's still in college making his first movie. And it's pretty good for that, but that's just what it is. There's not a whole lot to talk about really, unless you want to talk about a movie like that,
Well, did you watch it on YouTube, or how did you see
I
it?
watched it on YouTube.
I think that's the only way.
280p. It was so bad.
Yeah,
280p might even be generous.
4K,
Yeah, it was rough.
Right. Honestly, that's what
Yeah.
I said in my letterbox. Is I feel like this is what Criterion Collection is for. The reason it was invented was preserve cinema, and I feel like M. Night Shyamalan is more than well established at this point, to where his debut should be restored and published out there for people. I don't know if Criterion Collection works with the directors and they have to kind of be I want this redone, and maybe I feel like he would. I don't know. I liked it honestly more than I would have expected, because I didn't like Wide Awake, which is his second film, so I was kind of oh, maybe it's just the first couple films he wasn't really honing in, which obviously, like you said, it does feel very amateur at times, but also not really. And from a technical aspect, in terms of cinematography and camera work, it's kind of hard to really analyze this one, because it is 280p is being generous for the only way you can watch this. It's really grainy, and I think I had to zoom in on my it's a tough watch on YouTube that needs to be restored. But the story itself, I thought it was deeply personal, very, very intimate discussion of him, where he's belonging. He's obviously grappling with being an American, but he's going back to India and having to deal with the different cultures, and really basically seeming like a fish out of water when he goes over there, and just how that kind of impacts him, because obviously he's talking about American football and all these American things where their culture is obviously completely different. So it's just kind of him as a young filmmaker and young person kind of understanding that. And I don't know, do you happen to know if this is semi-autobiographical?
I was about to say that.
Is this how he met his wife?
I don't know if it's how he met his wife, but I do know that when he was really young, there were like some event that happened in his life, I'm pretty sure, that made him be like, oh, like I have to go back home, like you know, like my parents' home, you know, and I have to like go back to India, and I have to like reground myself. Like that happened to him in like real life, and he like did that, and that's when he made this movie. So I don't know, but
Yeah, as far as like, I can't really say like I recommend it to everyone to watch. Just simply like purely because of just how like a brutal the viewing experience is with the YouTube video that's out there. So I hope it gets like a DVD release. But if you're like a huge M Night fan, I would recommend it because I definitely think he's made worse movies, which we'll talk about, or just like movies that aren't as interesting. Like I think Wide Awake, I don't think Wide Awake's his worst movie. We'll jump into that right now, I guess. But I think it's kind of like his least interesting movie, at least. But yeah, well, 6 years later, after Praying with Anger, he releases Wide Awake, which is definitely more of a, I mean, it wasn't a massive like blockbuster. I'm not saying that, but it was way more widespread than Praying with Anger was, which was more of like kind of
produced by Harvey Weinstein.
Yeah, was it just him or was it by the Bros?
That's what I think it kind of is. Is that is more of just Harvey Weinstein.
It's the Bros, but it's like
that's a Harvey Weinstein production more than an M Night production. Which is
so
like,
Wide Awake. Have we? I feel like maybe we've all seen.
I haven't seen it. I don't think the three of us have seen it.
I think it's just me.
no, it's
Just you
Kevin.
then.
Oh,
Yeah,
it's just me.
us two this time.
Just us two. All right.
Okay.
Well, what are your thoughts on it? Because we both also like Doug and I gave Praying with Anger both 2.5, and me and you both gave this one a 1. So
Yeah.
we're lined up here.
You said it's not his worst movie. I do think it's his worst movie that I've seen, at least. Praying with Anger is the only one I haven't seen. But I saw in your review you said it was boring. I think that's kind of just like the best way to describe it. Like it's just a boring movie. I forgot most of what happens in it. It's really just not like an M. Night movie when you compare it to the rest of his filmography.
I forgot most of what happened in it, and I watched it 2 days ago. Like it's just one of those movies. Which, like, you watch one of those movies every once in a while, where like it's just everything that's happening on the screen just goes in one eye and out the other, and it's just like this movie happened to me, and I just like finished. I was like, I didn't get anything from that. I'm gonna see if like I wrote anything in my review that has any sort of logic to it, but
I think I just made fun of the title being ironic.
Yeah, true.
Wide Awake.
I guess that's why I haven't really rushed to see it, because my understanding of it is just M. Night is really young and Harvey Weinstein is in control and he doesn't really have much say. And it's like, okay, maybe I'll check it out one day, but it's like it's less of an M. Night movie than it is a studio kind of telling a young filmmaker what to do.
Yeah.
If I remember correctly, there is a twist in the movie, but I've forgotten the movie so much that I don't know what it is. But I know there was something that was surprising about it. I mean,
for the most part, it was just like a movie and a story we've seen like hundreds of times, like a classic, like a young boy just kind of living carefree in the world, and then something happens, like a pivotal moment happens in his life, and then it's kind of like, you know, you kind of have to grow up. You're like, oh, the world's not this happy place where everything's sunshine and rainbows. There's serious consequences, and then you kind of end the movie with him accepting all those around him. Similar to Brother Bear, honestly. Shout out, we reviewed that last week. You know, you kind of go through life carefree. Something happens, you get turned into a bear, and you realize, you know, we're not all enemies. Yeah. We're all just trying to live in this world together.
I would love to turn into a bear, voiced by Joaquin Phoenix.
I mean, I can't disagree with that. Kevin, I don't have anything else on Wide Awake. I think we can dive into more
it's
exciting
very much a nothing movie. I think we could go. I think we can move on.
So
is it his best film next?
Is it his best film next? I'm sure some people think.
No.
Oh, is it not?
It's not. It's most commonly cited as his best film.
Yeah, I think on IMDb it's his highest, but that's The Sixth Sense from 1999. So 1 year after Wide Awake, he got busy with 3 movies in back-to-back years. So The Sixth Sense. This one, I mean, I'm basically positive we've all seen this one, but I'll let someone else take it away since I've been talking a ton. So I'm gonna get out with Seth. Seth, tell us your thoughts on Sixth Sense.
Yeah, I think Sixth Sense is good. I remember this being kind of my favorite for a long while. I think this is kind of one of his most accessible films in terms of his pretty much kind of generic thriller horror. I think Bruce Willis is great. When I watched it again, I think I watched it again like a year ago for the first time in a few years. It doesn't quite have the same impact emotionally as some of his other films. Mainly for me, his 2 films that came after this, Unbreakable and Signs, which obviously we'll speak about. But I don't know, I think Sixth Sense is really good. I think I would assume it's mostly like his most seen as his best by the general audience, I think, anyway.
It's his highest rated on Letterboxd with a 4.0.
It's still his highest rated on Letterboxd.
Yeah.
Okay, interesting. But yeah, I really like it. I think it's good. I think it's solid. A good piece of storytelling. It obviously has the twist that made him so famous around that time and really propelled him into Hollywood. But I still think it's very good, but it's kind of slipped down my rankings the more I've watched it over time, because now I appreciate more of his emotionally intricate works, like his following two films. But I still think it's good. I still have it rated a 4 out of 5 anyway, so still really high.
I think that The Sixth Sense is. I think it can kind of. Jesus. I think that you can kind of break M. Night into like eras, and I think The Sixth Sense is kind of like the beginning of like the golden era in the general public's eye. Of like this guy is like the next Steven Spielberg is like kind of what people were talking about, and I think it's like. Then his like starting with The Sixth Sense, like his next 4 movies are like when he is like the highest public opinion.
Yeah.
For sure.
Yeah, Sixth Sense. I just watched it for the first time a couple days ago, which is I was really impressed with it purely because it's almost like I compared it to this in my Letterboxd review of like the Darth Vader being Luke Skywalker's father, where it's like pretty much everyone, even if you haven't seen the movie, knows like the twist at this point. It's just so ingrained into pop culture that it just everyone kind of knows the Sixth Sense twist. So knowing that going into it, I still like was very impressed with how much I enjoyed it, because a lot of times if you know the big reveal of a movie, you can kind of go into it and be like, it kind of lost some of its gravity or its weight. But I truly came away with it really enjoying it. I thought like Haley Joel Osment, I thought was kind of like the standout for me. Honestly, I thought he was like super great as a kid actor.
That's an all-time child performance.
Yeah, all-time.
He's great in AI as well. I think he's even better in AI.
Do you like AI, Aaron? I thought you wouldn't.
It's my favorite Spielberg film.
You're not a big Spielberg fan, are you?
But yeah, I don't love it either. This Sixth Sense is second to last on my M. Night ranking, and I still like it. For me, this is M. Night at his most conventional. I think this is M. Night showing that, hey, I can make a really good movie in the most conventionally way possible. I think he really changed. Like, that twist is really big and popular, but I think the movie is very conventional. And I think he's like, basically, it's like a painter showing that he can do realism and that he can make a painting look real. He is showing that he is a good filmmaker here. And I think it is a good movie. It's just like one of the more least interesting movies for me. But I think it is still really good.
It's one for the general audience. There's not really many risks he took.
Yeah,
that's what it is.
He's a young filmmaker. He's trying to be like, I can do
I can do it.
Yeah, I can do it. And he's showing that he can do it, so therefore he can take more risks in the future. And the more risks he's taking in the future are more interesting to me. But I still think this is really good. I remember seeing this like very young and leaving an impression on me. But now it's not my favorite, but I still really like it. Like, I like all these films. Actually, it's third to last, I think.
Do we want to cover as well, like when we go over them, do we want to cover where they actually land in our rankings as well?
Yeah, sure. You can touch on that.
Sixth Sense, I think, is like fourth or fifth for me. It's fourth for me. So it's still really high. High.
Yeah, I actually have it at tied for 1 right now with Unbreakable, but I haven't seen a couple of his films still. So I don't know where it'll ultimately end up, but I really enjoyed it. But it was only on first watch for me, whereas a couple of these I've seen a couple times. So I'll be really interested to see how this lands when I revisit it. George, where does Sixth Sense land for you?
Yeah, it's my third highest ranked M. Night movie, but my top 5 are all 3.5 out of 5s. So it's really.
That's nasty work. I'm not gonna lie.
Listen, you knew this.
You expected this.
You knew this going into this podcast
gross.
that I'm not a big M. Night fan, but
gross.
I love the Sixth Sense, or I won't say love. I really like the Sixth Sense for kind of the reasons that Owen says he disliked them. At this point in his career, M. Night has obviously taken a ton of risks, and it's no secret that they don't necessarily work for me. So I like the Sixth Sense, that this is just him kind of appealing to a massive general audience in terms of his storytelling. He's not trying to, give you something like a Knock at the Cabin or an Old, where he's just not giving you any information. He's very much holding your hand throughout the Sixth Sense as a storyteller, and given the risks that this man has taken throughout his career, I kind of appreciate the fact that this feels like his most tame outing of all of his filmography, right there with like a Split. So yeah, this is my third highest ranked, but it's all of my top 5, like I said, are all 3.5 out of 5s.
The Sixth Sense is like super famous for the plot twist, and I think the Sixth Sense is such like a famous movie that it kind of like made M. Night's whole identity be like the plot twist guy, even though he's not.
Yeah.
I wanted to ask you about you guys about that, like what you think about the obviously like the Shyamalan twist. I think we had a Twitter discourse about this like a month or two ago where I said like Shyamalan's one of the only like household names purely because of the Shyamalan twist that like everyone knows him, even if you don't know like M. Night's even his first name, but they're like, oh, Shyamalan twist, or beginning of his name. But I was kind of going to ask you guys, do you think it boxed him in to where like he forced twists in his upcoming films because he was like that guy, or do you think he just truly loves
I think there's only two movies M. Night was ever forced to make, and they're both movies you guys don't like. I think it's like Last Airbender and After Earth are the only movies. He was every other movie he had like complete full creative control. Like he only made because he thought it was a really good movie.
Well, except Wide Awake, but I mean,
other than Wide Awake, those don't count.
Wide Awake isn't really forced. It's more of like, I gotta make money.
He has to make their living. Yeah.
Would you consider like Wide Awake to be like Fincher's Alien 3, for example? That kind of, or Lynch's Dune?
Owen likes Alien 3.
Yeah, Owen loves Alien 3.
I would see it as like a more like a lesser thing than that even.
Okay, Lynch's Dune then for me would be
not like even that. I think it's just like, I don't even know what I would compare it to because it's just such a low concept.
It's like a Disney Channel movie that
I would say it's like Craig Mazin's Superheroes. The Superheroes.
I don't even know what that is.
No, I don't know.
That's actually that probably makes it a good comparison.
I think like what Kevin said is like if someone was tasked to make like a High School Musical movie, like the first one, the guy who made the first High School Musical movie, and then he went on to make like an Oscar winning movie. That's how we would talk about the High School Musical movie. Like it's just a for hire like for kids movie. A little disrespectful
to High School Musical, but that's okay.
I'm not talking about equality though. I'm talking about like who's it for, the budget, and it's just a random kids movie that he made to get money.
Yeah, he needed to put food on his table.
It's like it's not really like a Dune thing where it's like this, book and he's got big ideas, and it's really just him.
Yeah,
taking a job.
Like, Dune's interesting too because it's because Lynch also like picked Dune out of a hat because Lynch was like, oh yeah, I don't want to make fucking Return of the Jedi, I want to go direct Dune.
At this point in M. Night's career, after The Sixth Sense, this was the second highest grossing film of 1999, just behind Star Wars, so obviously you're not going to top that, but almost $700 million at the box office, so obviously after this he very much so became a director that everyone had on the radar after The Sixth Sense, and he followed it up immediately with Unbreakable the year after, reprising actor Bruce Willis once again in his film. This is tied for me with my favorite amongst M. Night. Huge fan. I know Seth's also really high on it too. We've talked about it a bunch.
Absolutely.
I make the joke all the time that like David Dunn, like if I got the ability to just like never be hurt, like my stupid ass would just like literally be like, all right, going to the Arizona Cardinals practice facility up the road, and we're trying out. Like I'm gonna show them. Like I'll just keep getting up. Like I'm not getting hurt. Like
Bro's gonna be the greatest running back of all time.
Yeah, honestly, like they're too fragile these days. They're real running backs are like Mr. Glass, but Unbreakable David Dunn. So for me, at 4.5 star, I love this movie. I've only seen it once, also though, so I need to rewatch. I watched it for the first time over half a year ago at this point. Huge fan.
I watched this a while ago. I remember liking it as a kid, but I rewatched it back in January. It's fantastic. It's definitely one of my favorites by far. I think it's such an interesting take on the superhero genre, being so grounded and realistic. And I think the use of color doesn't get mentioned enough when talking about Unbreakable. I think it's so good. I also think it's Bruce Willis's best performance ever, and I think this is kind of just so impactful whenever I watch it. I've watched it multiple times this year since, and I think right now it sits at number 2. It's no secret to what my number 1 is. Obviously, I think that's the next one. I don't think he did one in between. Unbreakable sits up number 2 of my M. Night ranking now. I think it's truly just one of the best superhero projects of this century so far. For me, anyway, I think it's just such an interesting take that not many filmmakers would take that risk, and I think M. Night really succeeded with that.
Mm-hmm. I just want to quickly add on to that. So the Unbreakable, Split, Glass make up like a comic book movie superhero trilogy, but it's not based off like comic books. Like there's no comics you can read about like Unbreakable Glass or anything like that. But this is like M. Night's version of what like a cinematic universe would be for like super. I don't know. Yeah. Everything's in quotes, like superhero. Like
it's not like a comic book adaptation, but I would say that it is a comic book movie because all of them are literally about like comic books, like and like a highfalutin like sense.
They're the same.
Like,
exactly.
Yeah.
So I'm curious, Owen. Like, this is another one that we're all rating pretty highly. Is this like your lowest
so
rated
this
M
is
Night?
in ninth, but it's 4 stars, so it's like,
Oh, okay. 4 stars.
Very
Yeah.
opposite of George. And for those of you who don't know Owen, like a 4-star movie means
nuts.
a 4-star review from Owen means like you should book a plane ticket and travel anywhere to see this film on any screen. Like 4 stars is rare. Anything above
You
that
scared
is-
me when you said 9th. Then I thought you were gonna put like 2.5.
Yeah, well, so the Sixth Sense we talked about was 11th, and that's 3 stars. But Unbreakable, I think Unbreakable is great. Seth touched on. I think Bruce Willis is phenomenal here. Like I said, the last one was a little more conventional. I think he's getting weirder here. And this for to come out in 2000 and to be a superhero movie like this it's like we've had so many superhero comic book movies in the past 20 years, and this like is kind of still one of the best ones.
This came out
Yeah,
before
I mean, he
Raimi's
made-
trilogy. It's crazy.
Yeah, no, I mean,
Yeah,
M. Night
it's,
made
like,
maybe
predates
like the
all of
best,
them.
one of the best superhero movies, like before the MCU was like considered a thing that could possibly exist in
Yeah.
culture. You know, like
It's really interesting, and I think there's a lot. I think he's just the first kind of touch on water for M. Night. I think water is a big theme throughout his filmography, really prevalent here. Yeah, I think it's great.
So I'm seeing on Letterboxd, K Meeks and George both have it at a 3-star. So both of you
Yeah.
not as high on it.
No, I like this
That's
movie
lame.
a lot, though. It's in the middle. It's in the middle
one
of
of
my
those
ranking.
this sits at my number 6 spot.
Same. That's also my
So
sixth.
like literally just outside like that 3.5 out of 5 top 5 that I have. This is one of those situations where I wish I had more time the week leading up to this to have rewatched Unbreakable, because I will admit I have not seen it in a very long time. And looking at M. Night's filmography, like I just watched Lady in the Water maybe like a couple months ago. I rewatched Old, The Village, Split, The Visit. I've rewatched a lot of these movies over the last couple of months, but for some reason Unbreakable was never a movie I cared to revisit.
yeah.
I do think you'd like it more now, honestly.
No, I trust me. I'm like, don't take this 6 spot on my rank 3 out of 5 personally, because I do think I will raise it. My biggest problem with it right now is it's unforgettable. I mean, it is forgettable.
It is unforgettable. I agree.
Which is my biggest problem with M. Night as a filmmaker as a whole. I don't think any of his films really resonate with me as much as they do, obviously, with the 3 gentlemen at the bottom of your screen. And Unbreakable just being as forgettable as it is, and just being a movie that I don't necessarily think about or care to revisit, just kind of tells me that, okay, maybe it's in that 3 out of 5 range for me right now. Definitely a movie I need to revisit, though.
Yeah, I kind of like what George said. I wouldn't take any of my like actual numbered ratings on any of these movies too seriously, because I only got to rewatch 2 of his movies before this, and one of them got a score raised. I feel like that would happen if I rewatched his entire filmography. I think they'd all go up. So yeah, I don't know. Not to be taken too seriously. I like Unbreakable a lot, though. I think as far as like I love revisiting like pre-MCU superhero movies and just being like refreshed by them, like how this movie's big like superhero moment is just that he gets on a bench press and like lifts
love
heavy
that.
weights. I'm like,
That's
that's
so
like when you
awesome.
compare that to like
I love
the
that.
superhero moments of like modern superhero movies, it's just so simple.
Yeah,
I
like
love that.
Shang-Chi
realize
fighting a
trend.
big ass dragon with Michelle Yeoh. Like,
yeah, I'm like, this is just, I don't know, it's just like a real character. Like,
Yeah.
no,
Yeah,
no,
it-
that scene in Unbreakable where the kid is like, "I'm gonna shoot you right now," and it's like
Yeah.
pointing the gun at him. That's
All-timer.
like from like
yeah.
real ass cinema, dude. That shit is so.
It's funny you mentioned that about like how refreshing it is like revisiting this, because when I first got Letterboxd, which is coming up on 2 years ago, I logged everything fresh. I didn't want to log anything and be like, oh, I saw this movie 2 years ago. I think it's probably 4 stars. So I was just like, I'm just gonna start at 0 and work my way up. And the first things I wanted to do is just like log all the, because it was like right before No Way Home was when I started my Letterboxd. I was like, oh, let me just get caught up and log all the MCU, because I hadn't actually seen like most MCU leading up to that point. So I watched all the MCU and then I went straight into the Dark Knight trilogy after that. And I think I overrated the
That's
hell out of
crazy.
Batman Begins purely because I watched like 27 straight MCU movies, and Batman Begins started. I was like, oh my God, this is such a breath
You're
of
like,
fresh
"Oh,
air.
it's a real fucking movie."
It's like Liam Neeson and Christian Bale like in an on fire building like fighting each other. I was like, oh God, this is great.
Oh my god, it's a director with a voice. Holy shit.
Watch Ant-Man 3 and then watch Unbreakable, and you'll love Unbreakable more.
Yeah, but that comparison's just unfair. Like,
It's like, yeah, take a shot and then have a chaser after it. You'll appreciate that lemonade a little more than you did before. We'll dive into the next film that came out 2 years after this, which is Signs. So Signs, we have a 5-star from Doug, from
Hell
K
yeah,
Meeks,
brother. Hell yeah, brother.
from Seth, and then Owen and George, another classic. Like, they have the same opinion on every film. They both gave it a 3.5 star. Don't shoot me. I was planning on watching it yesterday. Did not get to it, so I have not seen Signs yet.
Bro,
which I
if
know
I
is,
knew
like,
you didn't
everyone's
watch,
favorite.
oh my gosh.
Yeah, I basically yesterday I was like, I need to watch Signs, I need to watch The Village and The Visit, and I need to watch Edge of Tomorrow. So I have 4 films to watch. Didn't get to any of them because by the time I finished editing yesterday's ReelTok podcast, my fiance and I had plans that night, and like it just went way longer than expected. I didn't get home till like 1:30. I turned on Signs for 20 minutes. I was like, I got to be up in 3 hours to record again. Like, it's just not happening, fellas.
That's
Like,
rough.
I'm not going to get
rough.
to it. But again, like, time traveling, like I mentioned in our Edge of Tomorrow review, where like for the listeners, like I will have watched Edge of Tomorrow by the time you hear our review on it. For Signs, The Village, and The Visit, 100% for sure. Like, they will be logged, ranked in my list, reviewed on Letterboxd before this episode actually goes up. For this discussion right now, I'll remove myself from the Signs talk, kick it off with honestly any of the 5-star folks, and we'll get into Owen and George.
All right, Kevin, let's
what they
cook
didn't
right
like.
now. This movie rocks.
I mean, this
Here we
movie
go.
this movie transcends an M. Night ranking for me. This is like one of my 20
same
favorite
with me.
movies ever.
Yeah.
I'm
Is this the
obsessed
best
with
movie
it.
about aliens ever made?
Yeah.
No.
Alien.
I mean, yeah.
thought-
For me, it is.
Alien
I think.
Covenant.
Unless there's like a movie about aliens in my favorite movies that I just can't
To be
think
fair,
of.
Alien
mean,
Covenant is great. So I don't
Holy
mind.
shit. I mean, is this the best movie about God ever made?
Yes,
I mean,
Silence.
like, are we?
Silence. Silence.
Yeah, I know. I'm being a little silly, but
I'm agreeing. I'm agreeing.
I'm the same with Kevin. This is like not only my favorite M. Night film. I think this is. I obviously redid my list recently. This gets in my top 20 of all time. I think. I don't know, man. Signs is one of the ones I grew up with. I rewatched it like fairly recently after a few years. I just think it's such a beautiful film on faith, on family. I think I get why people don't like the ending, but I think people are so. The criticism regarding the aliens in this film, I think people miss the point completely in my eyes, and I really, really do. I get why people don't like it. Don't get me wrong. And again, this isn't for everyone, but I think people do really miss what the film is based on, what the film is for, and what it's about. And the aliens aren't the central topic of discussion here. But yeah, same as Kevin, this kind of transcends my M. Night ranking. This really is, the number one by like a long way. It's my only 5-star.
Yeah.
what if I say this might not even be my favorite M. Night?
That's fine. It's just wrong, but it's fine. I mean, I always got it, like,
It's
10th
wrong,
place,
it's not
so,
No,
it's
but this
okay.
movie's so good. I think this is like, I mean, best Mel Gibson performance probably for me.
Yeah.
Like best M. Night performance. We haven't even talked about how M. Night's in a lot of these movies.
He's-
I love him in this film. Like, just the guy.
He's
in the
like
car.
really
always-
good in this movie.
He is. I would
Joaquin
agree with
Phoenix is also awesome in this movie.
And there's, like,
I love
yeah,
Joaquin Phoenix in this movie.
So there's like an interesting kind of like meta aspect to Signs 2, where it's like, so M. Night, the filmmaker, like the auteur of Signs, right, is also the character in Signs that causes the Mel Gibson character like this fucking psychic damage, right? Like his character does in the movie, but then also as a filmmaker, he's doing it to the character. And that's interesting.
That's interesting, actually.
Yeah. This movie is really fucking cool. I just like I when I rewatched it yesterday, I saw this in my review, but I was like, the first hour of this movie or whatever, like maybe hour, like a little over an hour, is just like really cool, like thriller, like awesome, like high tension moments. The comedy fucking rocks. Like I'm just laughing at every single joke. It's so funny. And then there's
It's
just
so
like 30
awkward.
minutes at the end of this movie where I just don't stop crying for 30 minutes straight. And I remember when I wrote that review, someone commented and they were like, I must have watched the wrong cut of this movie. I'm like, do you guys not get emotional when you watch it? Like there are like
I get
six
emotional when I
scenes.
watch
There are
it.
like six scenes in a row that are like literally the most touching displays of like love
Family.
between family members that I've
Absolutely.
ever seen. Like there are so many good when he's like telling his kids like what happened when they were born while these aliens are trying to invade them. I'm like, oh, this is so good. Like,
And this movie's also like continues his like motif with water. Like M. Night's kind of like fascination with water in a big way with this. I mean, throughout the movie, but like the big scene at the end where it's like all the water cups are around and the alien shows up.
And I
And
also
it kind of
just
and it
think-
like represents like holy water and
yeah, I also just think it's really beautiful that it's like a movie that's like, obviously you say it's one of the best movies about religion, and like definitely a fair interpretation. I think as somebody who doesn't care about that, it's also just like a movie that it like is just like a really nice movie about faith, like regardless of what you believe in. Like it's just
Yeah.
like a really hopeful movie about just like believing in something.
Yeah.
real.
Did I watch a different cut of this movie than you?
Okay.
Just out of curiosity.
Okay.
No, me and Owen always on the same wavelength. Obviously, we
Wavelength.
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 Yeah.
Hey
We
yo,
went on wavelength.
Oh,
Michael
Oh,
Snow.
wait,
Wait, we got a
wait.
bunch of Michael Snow
George,
enjoys.
George already forgot that movie
I
exists.
forgot. I was like, I thought you were talking about the number game that I see on TikTok all the time. No, I like Signs. It's one of my 3.5 out of 5s for M. Night. It's sitting just behind The Sixth Sense at number 4. I think the reasons Kevin loves this movie are the reasons that hold it back for me. I love that this movie is kind of introduced to you as this very tense, unpredictable thriller comedy kind of movie. And then it just takes such a turn at the end where M. Night's really trying to kind of like shove these thematic elements down your throat. And I think it comes off not as personal and intimate as you guys obviously make it out to be. And maybe it just didn't land for me. Maybe I watched it in the wrong mindset, but none of this movie, like towards the
If that's how you feel now, wait till we get to the happening.
yeah,
That's going to be a great
I'm
discussion.
gonna stay
Really
fully
good.
silent for that entire conversation. I'm gonna turn my camera off. I'm gonna go walk my dog while you guys talk about the fucking happening. But no, it still sits at my number 4 spot. It's definitely another M. Night I'm due for a rewatch on. Yeah, 3.5 out of 5. I'm not here to shit on Signs because M. Night has plenty of other films that I'm definitely gonna work into.
I'm keen to hear, Owen, your thoughts on Signs compared to the other films.
Yeah, so Signs, we're kind of just like talking about stuff that's at the bottom of my list right now because I think M. Night's really just gotten better over time. There's this interview with, I don't know what it's called, but he's just like talking about movies. And he's talking about filming his show, so I think it's Servants.
Yeah.
And he just talks about Severance or whatever. He's talking about a show, right? And he's talking about just the amount of filming he gets to do on that show and just the amount of stuff he learns just from filming over and over and over again. And I just truly just think he's just gotten better as a filmmaker, a pure filmmaker over time. So a lot of this is just more at the end of my ranking. But
Visually, I probably agree. Like in terms of
I really do like Signs. It's one of the things where I think this could definitely go up for me in a couple of years, just on more rewatches. It's one that I just really like, but I just really love a lot of the other ones. So it's like it's not one of my favorites, but I do really like it. I think the performances are great. I love M. Night here. It's just overall isn't one that I really think about that much or gravitate towards.
So where
Also-
does this land on your ranking? Sorry.
I think 10th.
So that's
11th?
like high for you at 10. So
Yeah,
this must
so
be your highest average direct. Is it higher than like Brian De Palma in terms of the averages? Because it must
So
be
it's like
high.
pretty much the
Apples
same.
and oranges, buddy.
Yeah,
Like
pretty much the same. Well, it's like it's because we're talking about like Sixth Sense is like 11, then you have Signs at 10, and then Unbreakable at 9. Like these are all kind of in the same area for me. But kind of what we're talking about with the water thing, I think the family thing is really big for M. Night. I think family, I think father-son stuff.
that's what I was gonna say. Like the biggest like thematic through line between like these first 3 like real films for him are like they're all about being a dad, you know?
Yeah.
Like all of them
I,
is about
I was going to
fatherhood.
mention it. I didn't get to mention it for Unbreakable, but that's one of the things that really works for me for Unbreakable is the father-son thing. And we'll get to After Earth later, but I think there's this father-son thing that really works for me. It doesn't work for me as much in Signs, but when it does work, those tend to be some of my favorite moments of M. Night. So I think the water stuff, I think the faith stuff, and then like the father-son family stuff really works for me here.
Can you guys, and this is a serious question, can you explain to me, because between Signs and Lady in the Water, M. Night seems to have this weird like infatuation with writing himself into his own movies as this like messiah kind of figure?
Well, here's the thing. Okay,
And that's not like that's not a criticism. That's like a genuine question.
I think that don't you think that like the director is kind of like the god of like a film,
No,
right?
Like I get that, but like my thought is like it's such like a I don't even know what word to use it. It's such like a pretentious thing to do, I guess. Not pretentious, but it's like, we get it. Like, you're the director. This is your movie. You're obviously, you know, later in his career, he has so much creative freedom here and there.
I mean,
I think that Signs, it works really well because it's a very small role that is very powerful, and I think it's like really interesting when you consider the fact that he is like the writer director. I think Lady in the Water makes sense because Lady in the Water is like the all-time. This is a one for me. It's like I just made a bunch of movies. I made a bunch of money. I'm gonna make whatever the fuck I need to make right now, and that is him just making a whole ass movie about himself.
Yeah.
So I think that's why it makes sense in Lady in the
We can
Water.
get to that later, but I think Lady in the Water, he's talked about this on record, that is his most personal film. So I guess it makes sense. But is that a negative for you when
No.
he comes on the
It's
screen?
not a criticism.
Okay.
It's just something, because like, in my mind, I'm thinking like, imagine if like the Russo brothers wrote themselves into a Marvel. You guys would be losing
They
your
did.
fucking minds.
What's his name is in like?
Oh yeah, he's in
Endgame.
Endgame. Yeah,
Is he?
yeah. Yeah.
I didn't even know that.
One of them's at the beginning in like the therapy class. But yeah,
Well, George, one thing I'm interested to pull on that for you, because like you just talked about on the pod the other week, Cooper Raiff, like his two films, he's like basically
he's
writes
everything.
himself in to be like
That's an issue I have with people.
to have like women, like he's always just like gets whatever like the lead actress is to be like his like girl basically in all his movies.
Yeah.
So I was kind of interested like,
Well,
why-
Tarantino.
do you think it's just a
his stuff too?
I mean, Woody Allen, we all love him.
So do you think it's just like a
Yeah.
matter of like if you like the movie, and I'm not saying this like as like a gotcha. I'm saying like if you like the movie and the director's in it, you can kind of let it slide. But if you dislike it and the director's in it, you're kind of more like.
But again, I don't
good.
dislike the fact that M. Night writes himself into his movie. It's just very interesting that he always does it, and he always like puts himself in as like this messiah figure, as opposed to just like a dude.
I think if you talk about writing as well, it's just something that you gravitate towards. I mean, like in my writing, like I'm always writing. When I was in school and even now, like a lot of my scripts are just like reflective of my real life. Like I just take things that happen to me and I turn them into a story. And I think people just gravitate towards doing that. And there are obviously M. Night has some movies that aren't that, but I don't ever like think that that's. I just think that that's natural for artists to want to tell stories about themselves because it's how you deal with stuff going on in your life is to make art, and sometimes that's just a direct reflection of who you are.
I think with M. Night too, this is God. There's so much unwarranted criticism, and I think a big one is this whole like, oh, M. Night needs to stop forcing himself into his movies as an actor.
It's not a criticism from me.
No, I'm not saying from you.
I'm
but
not
like that's something
criticizing.
I've heard a lot from fucking like brainlets on YouTube. Is like where it's like, oh, like he's such a bad actor, he has to stop forcing himself in movies. I think it's just like M. Night likes to act. I think that he enjoys being an actor, right? And I think that he just like after he writes the movie, I think he like looks at everything, and I think he looks and he's like, is there a role I could just have? Like, is there like a role that I can like just like fill in here? Yeah. I think the only time he really did like write himself into the movie was Lady in the Water. I think every other time he's in the movie, he's just like, I could do this.
Kind of what Kevin was saying about the personal stuff. I think when you look at his filmography in the movies that he's not in, they're often the movies that are not very personal. Like he's not in Avatar. He's not in. I don't think he's in Wide Awake.
He's not in After Earth.
He's not in After Earth.
Yeah.
So it's like these movies that he's making to just make. He's not in them because he's not in them necessarily.
He's not the story.
Yeah, so I think it's like there's a lot of directors that do it. I think it's similar to kind of when Tarantino likes to act, so he's just going to act in his movies because he likes to act, and he's making a movie, and he's like, this is movies, like let's act in them. I think it's just kind of that thing where he just likes to act, and they're very personal movies.
Tarantino also likes to suck on toes.
That is
I mean,
true.
yeah, who doesn't?
Yeah, so I just think it's a very personal movie that it's easy to insert yourself in a very personal situation.
That's fair.
Well, let's move on to The Village now, which came out 2 years after this.
Fuck
Again,
yeah.
another one
Let's
I did not
do
get to,
that.
so I'm removing
Yeah.
myself from the conversation again. So I'm going to let you guys take it away and talk The Village.
I really
I
like
have
it.
a
Wait,
lot of
Doug. Wait,
strong-
Doug. Last night, didn't you say this is like his most? Would you call it like his most essential film?
Yeah, after Sixth Sense, The Village is his most essential film for
Oh,
sure.
really?
Yeah.
This is another
think,
3
yeah.
out of 5.
I really like The Village.
This
I
is
really
my.
like it.
No, I lied. I've watched Lady in the Water more recently than The Village, but this was a first watch for me only a couple months ago. My biggest takeaway from this film, and I know Owen, I believe you and I went back and forth on this a little bit on Twitter after I watched this movie. I call it a dialogue problem. You call it a dialogue style. Whatever it is, it's
dialogue problems. Despicable. That's despicable.
Yeah. Whatever
That's despicable stuff.
This is the craziest movie for this.
But
No, this is his best. Like the dialogue is at the best here.
It is so robotic and choppy and forced. It removes any ounce of charisma from his films, in my humble opinion.
I have a fucking thing that I'm going to say about this movie that would make a lot of people angry, I think. But I think that the scene on the porch where it's Joaquin Phoenix talking to Bryce Dallas Howard, and it's like him like professing his love, right? I think that is the best version of that scene in maybe any movie. I think that shit is better than that shit in like Pride and Prejudice. I think that shit is so fucking perfect in this movie.
I think that might be the best. I think that might be my favorite scene in any of his movies, period.
Really?
Yeah.
I think that scene is that good.
I
think the movie is that well written. And I don't know. I like, obviously we could get into these discussions about pretty much all of his movies with those complaints, but I think it's just like, I think M. Night makes it very clear. And especially when you watch his whole filmography too, you notice it. It's like he cares about certain things more. I mentioned in my review of The Happening yesterday that he's like a filmmaker that cares a lot about ideas, and his themes are so strong. And I think that is also part of a good screenplay, like whether you think the dialogue is unnatural or not. And I think the biggest thing is just that you look at something like The Sixth Sense, which, like, by everybody's standards, like any professional screenwriter you ask, like everybody thinks it's one of the best scripts ever written. From just like a basic screenwriting standpoint, it's like somebody that has that skill as a screenwriter is not just going to forget how to write scripts like that. So I just think that people who focus too much on his dialogue are looking at the wrong thing, and he's just making it clear that that's not something he values. Like, he cares more. He doesn't want you to like pay attention to these specific lines because these lines are just conveying ideas. And The Village is like full of beautiful ideas. So
I think he just like likes writing characters like that. You know, I think people like, that's the thing. A lot of people call it like a dialogue problem. I think he's like straight up. I think he's doing it on purpose. Like I feel so confident he could write more naturalistic dialogue if he wants to. He just like doesn't want people to talk like that in his movies.
That was my point with The Sixth Sense. I'm like, nobody that writes that script forgets how to write.
Yeah, well,
like,
that's the thing I was talking about earlier with the conventionalism. Is like when he makes The Sixth Sense, it's like, okay, this is how I can do it this way. Now when I do the abstract thing, like when I do like the Picasso weird face thing, it's like, okay, you've seen me make a realistic face. Now when their eyes are a little slanted, it's on purpose. I think The Village is like, we're starting to get into like the heavy hitter, like he's continuing. Like I said earlier, he's just continuing to get better. I think The Village is wonderful. I don't really remember the dialogue that much. This is one of the ones I haven't seen in a while. We must make haste. Yeah, but I don't remember it like being weird to me. But I don't know. But it's also like they're in a weird, like it's in a weird environment.
Yeah. That's another thing. It's like
not in modern. Well, no,
that's the big twist of the movie is that they're living in this village like it's the 1700s, and in reality it's the modern day on the outside world. So of course it doesn't sound how we do.
Hot take. That's like, people call this like, after The Sixth Sense, people say this is like the biggest M. Night twist, right? Is like this like movie is like The Village, right?
Yeah.
If you watch this movie, that's not even a twist. Like, like 20 minutes into the movie that this shit is not in this, like this shit takes place in modern day and they're just in, like a fucked up little village. It's like they're like, he's like communicating that to the audience like early in the movie.
The twist is worth talking about too, because this is one of those movies where like it was super divisive because people hated the twist.
Yeah, people said that it was really dumb. That's the thing, calling it dumb.
End of critical reception. Right.
Yeah, this was it. It was like after The Village, things get rocky.
I think The Village, for me, the strongest aspects of The Village is the visuals. I think this is probably the best looking M. Night film for me. Maybe along the line, maybe with Unbreakable.
Yeah, well, there's a lot of those orange like leaves colors and the green grass of the village. It's like very like pristine grass.
Yeah, I love it.
Yeah.
No, it's beautiful. This is my 8th ranked film.
And like the Red Hoods and stuff. Of the
I love it. Red Hoods are great.
And Bryce Dallas Howard's red hair. Yeah.
Bryce Dallas Howard's great.
She's so good in it. Yeah, I really like it. This is my 6th in M. Night's ranking.
Oh wow, I thought it would be higher for you.
Yeah,
No, I have.
It's
It's a 4-star. It's my lowest
Yeah,
4-star. So it's
Yeah,
like,
Okay.
it's 4 stars for me as
Yeah,
well.
this one really connects with me because this is like just M Night like being a softie, just like being a romantic.
Yeah,
and
being
like
a
made
romantic.
for you. Yeah.
I love that. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's because it's a movie all about love, and it's kind of like it's like the antithesis. I think The Village is like the antithesis to a lot of Lars von Trier's movies. Like it's like the anti-melancholia, you know?
Yeah.
Oh,
Because-
shit,
and that-
yeah, that's
because like how like melancholia is all about how like people fucking suck,
Yeah.
people
And
like are
that's-
selfish and evil and fucking despicable, and The Village is all about how like people rock, people are
Yeah.
fucking awesome,
It's also all of his movies. That's like
Yeah, I think you
that's
could
like
say that
my
about his
biggest
whole career.
takeaway about him as a filmmaker is he's such an optimist and like he instills so much hope about humanity into his movies. It's just like really sweet. Like it's really sweet to see a filmmaker who just like values people.
Yeah,
Lars
like
von
people
Trier,
bring up-
that comparison's funny because I actually get it now. He is completely antithesis to his film.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Completely the antithesis.
Put those two
Like-
guys in a room.
It's
Oh,
crazy.
like-
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, M. Night would fucking kill Lars von Trier, I think, literally with this. But like The Village, like people always talk about how like the twist at the like the big reveal at the end, they say that it's really dumb. But to me, I'm not thinking about like the logic of it. I'm not thinking
Right.
about it logically. The twist happens, and then like there's a zoom out after like he helps the girl, and it's like he has the necklace hanging on like the his like car windshield, and I'm like. I'm crying. Tears are streaming down my
Yeah.
eyes. I'm like,
It's the
humanity
same
is a
with
beautiful
Signs
thing.
ending. It's the same criticism we get with the
Yeah.
Signs ending. I don't think I need to look at it logically because I think the Signs ending is so beautiful to the point where I don't care at that point. Same
Yeah.
as what Kevin said earlier, but yeah, I really like
It's
it.
logic is a weird thing that people like almost like fetishize.
People
nowadays.
count- People only
Yeah, the fetishization
consider
of logic. Yeah,
It's a
and it's
modern
like weaponized
fetishization
against
of
M. Night.
logic
It's
in
weaponized
art.
against M. Night.
Which
People
I think
often
is such a
just, like-
weird thing. 'Cause
They'll
it's-
consider
it's-
logic for films that they'll only put it into an argument for a film that they've not really enjoyed, and I think it kind of goes both ways. I get it sometimes, but I think with M. Night, I don't really care because of his
Yeah.
emotional.
Yeah.
So
I think it's a weird
The thing with
'cause
logic is also how you set up the world.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. Like, yeah,
Yeah.
it's like the end of Spider-Man 2. Everybody loves Spider-Man 2, and at the end of Spider-Man 2, when fucking Joey Diaz or whatever is like going up to the supervillain on the train and being like, "Hey, don't touch Spider-Man, bro," it's like
So
that's not
good,
that shit.
man.
Like
It's
that's
so
not
good.
like logical, really. Like,
Yeah.
Nah, that's valid. If Joey
It's
Diaz
like-
came up to me and yelled at me, I would cower.
I just
Oh.
think it's a weird thing to go into a movie asking for. Like, I get watching like a documentary and being like, "Hey, that doesn't fucking make sense."
you want to escape if you watch a film, most
But
of the
I
time.
just I feel like it's the only art form. It's what's the art form like? It's like the biggest art form for general audiences. So it's obviously the art form with everyone's gonna have an opinion. But I think it's a weird thing where it's like I always bring it back to painting and stuff like that because it's just like there's just different styles and every film is trying to obtain a different goal, right?
yeah,
So if my goal is not logic or to live in a logical world, then criticizing it for not being logical is just not like an anti-criticism. It's not a criticism because that's not my attempt at here. It's like if you don't like it for being not logical, I don't think you're meeting it at the level it's trying to attempt to be at. I don't think you're even attempting to interact with it in any sort of way.
yeah. There's a lot of bad faith M. Night criticism. Also, we're not even
Yeah.
halfway through his movies,
I
and we
just-
could segue this into
Yeah,
this
I don't
next
know. One
Lady
more
in the
thing
Water.
I just want to say, I just think it's a weird way to approach things, and I think this is the earlier start of his criticism because I think Signs is a little bit, but I just think it's when he gets weird, everyone's like that's weird, and I don't like that, and it's a disassociation from it. And we talk about the optimism. I think all of his films are so optimistic and heartfelt, and I don't think you're able to feel the heart if you're worrying about things like logic. I don't think you can get to the emotional bits if you're like caught up in like things like that. I don't think that's possible to interact with it on the right level.
Well, would you agree, Doug, that The Village closes era 1 of M. Night? Or era
Yes,
2,
for
like-
No,
No,
yeah, era 1.
Praying with Anger and Wide Awake is pre-era. That's
Yeah,
era
that's
0.
pre-era.
Now,
That's
era
proto
1's
M.
now
Night.
over, and now
Yeah.
we're into the. Well, is this next era only 2 films with Lady in the Water and The Happening? Where it's
I
just
would
films
say
he
his
wanted to
next
make?
era. I would say his next era is. maybe Owen would disagree. I would put it as Lady in the Water through After Earth, and I would say this is like the when everybody in America wanted to kill M. Night.
Well, it depends on what you're like categorizing, because I think Lady in the Water and Happening could be its own thing, because when we talk about The Village being the end of this era, I think it is like if you're like chapterizing it, I think it's like you start with The Sixth Sense and it's like, oh, he's at the top of the world, and you're slowly like kind of bringing him down, and The Village is where he breaks a little bit. He kind of, and then the Lady in the Water is a direct response to critique,
The breaking.
and it is a direct, like, he talks about it as his most personal film. So, and then The Happening happens, and they trash that again, and his whole world kind of falls apart.
Yeah, and now he's on the back foot, and he's like, okay, I'll make a whatever like bullshit cartoon movie for you guys, and then
So The Happening and Lady in the Water, which are personal films, masterpieces, they lead into him having to make The Last Airbender and After Earth.
yeah, like out of necessity.
I feel like those are different sections for me personally, just because they're like he's doing like for hire stuff.
Yeah. I guess like my perspective was when I said like all like the next four, like Lady in the Water through After Earth, are like one section. I think this is where the normal person like looks at his career on like a big board or whatever, and they're like, oh, they take a big ass marker and they like put a big X on these four movies, and like these are what he's added. Like these are the worst four movies.
Yeah, and I think in general that's like
what I do.
Yeah.
In general, I think like that's like what I think that's a good description of kind of how his career is going for where we're at right now, going through his filmography. So Lady in the Water, I actually really like this. So I went into it. Let's see, when did I log this? February 1st. So I guess it's been over half a year ago. I thought it was more recent. I know George disagrees, but we'll get to hear his thoughts. But I actually loved Paul Giamatti in this. Like loved like one of my favorite performances.
All-time performance.
One of my critiques, though, which is why I'm interested to watch The Village after hearing you guys talk about Bryce Dallas Howard, is like I didn't think she got like a ton of opportunity to flex her range here. I wouldn't say she had no range, because I think her character didn't really give her much to work with in this compared to other movies where she has a little more dialogue, a little more activity. I mean, most of this movie is Paul Giamatti kind of caring for her. And I thought the ending was rushed a little bit for me personally, which I know, like, I don't know, pacing is a weird thing for me, which I almost like am starting to believe like it's not real. Like pacing's not a real thing. Like when people say it's like slowly paced or too fast paced, but for me, I just felt like the end of the movie seemed like it tied up the story a little too quick for me. But this is very much a fairy tale, nighttime, bedtime story, very personal film. Like Owen mentioned, he's been on record many times saying it's one of his personal films. He had an interview where he said like, basically what if like your house was burning down, like what movies of yours would you take with you? And he said Unbreakable, Lady in the Water, The Visit, and then Old. This is from a couple of
Those are four bangers.
Yeah. So those are the four movies. But I think like probably if like this is just me guessing, maybe you guys know something I don't. If he had to have a number one, I feel like it was probably his number one favorite, because it was basically like his bedtime. It basically like his reimagining of a bedtime story he told his kids
Adam Sandler's bedtime stories.
Yeah.
It's a really interesting movie.
Yeah.
I think that movie's interesting.
I think Lady in the Water, is this your like number one, Owen?
Yeah, this is my favorite M. Night.
Okay, because I think the reason I watched this, because at the point when I watched this was I probably had like 7 more M. Nights to go through, and kind of like you mentioned how like this is the era of people putting an X on them. Like when you have like stuff like I hadn't seen Signs, Unbreakable, Sixth Sense, like Lady in the Water is not normally the one someone would watch first out of that group to like go through, but Owen like I think just went on like a Twitter rampage or some time about how much he like loved this movie.
It's probably because George watched it.
I would go as far as to say Lady in the Water is kind of a forgotten film.
Good.
I hadn't even heard of it up until like a year ago.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, because it's like
Person.
everyone yells about The Last Airbender like every week on Twitter, and After Earth gets talked about because Will Smith is in it.
And The Happening is very like memeable.
Yeah, but this is the
yeah,
one where it's
Happening
like
was also
no
really
one
popular.
talks about this movie.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I don't actually remember watching this. I'll be honest. Like this was a couple of years ago. I don't remember. It was like I don't remember liking it, but I also don't remember hating it. So this, I'm going to start this one. This sits right now as second to bottom, but I don't know. I can't remember. It was like 2 years ago. I'm not sure.
Yeah, to Owen's point, this isn't the most talked about M. Night movie, thankfully, because I couldn't fucking stand it. It's Owen's number one, and it's a 1 star for me, so I guess we got that number 1 in common. This was just the most lifeless, pitiful attempt at a fairy tale I've ever seen in my entire life.
You're crazy.
I actually, Tyler, I know you said I may disagree with you. I actually don't on Paul Giamatti. I thought he was great, and he's probably the only reason that this movie isn't a half a star for me. there's so much attempted lore establishment. He tries to get so deep, and I think it just comes off very shallow and just unintelligent. It's just, I remember very clearly watching this like in my apartment, and I was like, I'm really excited for Lady in the Water. I know a lot of people rate it highly, a lot of my mutuals, so maybe this will be where I turn on M. Night. And like a half hour into this movie, I was like, this is just pitiful. I'd rather stick something in my eyes to stop me from staring at this movie.
It's not that. That's crazy. It's like how do you think it's that
I
bad?
truly, and I'm not even like, I know I'm like the M. Night hater of this little 6-man podcast right here, and I know maybe I go a little overboard with my like Happening and Last Airbender hate, but I dislike this movie with every ounce of fiber in my fucking body. This was just such a pitiful attempt at like M. Night creating this next like fairy tale classic. I think this is where his dialogue and storytelling comes off as the most obnoxious. And again, I will refrain from calling it a dialogue problem, but his dialogue style just absolutely removes me from every single one of his movies. It is so devoid of charm and charisma. Like, you have Paul Giamatti, you have Bryce Dallas Howard, like, and you make them feel so bland because of how shitty the dialogue is in this movie.
I know why you don't. I get why you don't like this one. What I remember, from watching this, I don't think I enjoyed this one much, to be honest. From what I remember, I get it. But
One thing for me that, and again, like I watched it 8 months ago, so it's not completely fresh in the brain, but just like read my letterbox reviews, trying to refresh my brain, is like M. Night has great camera work in pretty much every one of his movies. Like I know, like we'll get to like Knock at the Cabin, like that's probably one of my favorite things of it. But Lady in the Water is one I noticed more than like any of them. And again, like I said, when I watched this for the first time, it was like my fourth M. Night, so it was like before I saw most of his filmography. But I really, really like the camera work in this one. Like, just trying to refresh my brain for my review. Like, there's so many times where there was just like something going on in like the corner of the screen that was actually like really important, but barely a focal point in what was being framed. A lot of just like obscure focal points and like quick zooms in this, and I don't know, just everything about the camera work really drew me into this movie. Paul Giamatti was just like the icing on the cake because I truly loved his performance. But yeah, like I don't know, I gave it 3.5 stars, like which. I mean, Letterboxd average is like a 2.4, so obviously I'm like quite
so
higher
high.
than most people.
You're crazy. What the fuck?
But yeah,
It's so
this is what I needed, George. Thank you. This is
What
I
the
was waiting for.
fuck? No,
I think this
bro.
is M. Night's my favorite written movie from him. I think when I talk about writing, I think two people come to mind, and it's less of like it's like more of anti-writing. I think of Terrence Malick, and I think of M. Night. I think it's more of
Terrence.
which is like completely like different people, but it's more of words than writing. I don't care about writing. It's more of words. And I think the words that are being said here are really important. And I think, fairy tales are something that I really like. I think like that whole aesthetic is really interesting. We talk about Paul Giamatti. I think Paul Giamatti's great. But I think when you talk about lore, I don't think lore is important here. I don't think there is attempt at lore, really. I don't even think that is... it's more of like a kid making things up. I don't think lore is in the kid's head. I think he's thinking of things. I think there is like a sense of that. We talk about Bryce Dallas Howard not having much range because I think it's very much like supposed to be this very like childlike performance. I think a lot of it is we talk about the family thing. I think there is this weird kind of family in the whole like building. I think there's water, of course, is here. It is M. Night's most personal film because he's putting him as the writer, and he's talking about there's a critic in the movie. He's putting a critic in the movie, and he's making him look stupid because critics are stupid sometimes. I think we talk about the shot. I don't know how you could argue that this movie shot bad. I think there's really cool stuff going on here. I think it's beautiful. M. Night really works well in one location settings. Is this his first one
Kind of
location
the goat
film?
of the one location
Is this
film.
his first? I think this is his first one location film.
Yeah.
And
Well,
I
maybe
think,
maybe Wide Awake is because it's at the school. I haven't seen it.
No,
That is
probably-
And to your point, and this is why I love like M. Night discourse on Twitter, because I think it's hilarious how like both sides just don't, I guess, understand where each other's coming from. Like everything I just said I disliked about the film, you basically came back and said, well, it's all done on purpose. And my thing is, like, I understand that it just doesn't work for me. Like, I get,
taste, like
I absolutely get what
sure.
M. Night's going for. I absolutely get that, like, this is his, like, lens. This is how he writes and shoots movies. I get that. It just doesn't work for me at all. And Lady in the Water is one of those examples where everything just feels so amplified. Like, the shitty dialogue just feels so amplified. Paul Giamatti's overacting just feels so amplified, and I get that's what he's going for, but it just does not work for me. It doesn't resonate with me. It doesn't sit well with me. I watch his movies, or I watch some of his movies towards the bottom of my ranking, and I'm like, I get it. Like, I get what he's attempting at here. I get the discourse that, oh, M. Night makes bad movies on purpose, but to me, it
Well,
just
not bad movies.
not bad movies. I mean, well, no, I've seen so many people tweet M. Night makes bad movies on purpose. Let's not act like that's not discourse that runs
That's
around
crazy.
Twitter.
Well, whoever's
Those are
making
crazy.
that, whoever's starting that discourse is.
I've seen that.
You need to get
rampant.
euthanized.
People say that all the
Right.
time.
That's crazy.
But again, I get what he's going for. It just doesn't land for me. It just doesn't.
That's fine.
I don't watch his movies and leave them like, oh wow, that really sat well with me. Like, I really enjoyed what he was going for there.
I think Lady in the Water, I like this movie. But I agree. I think this is a misstep for me as well, especially coming off of this 4-movie stretch, where it's like, one of the kind of like an all-time 4-movie stretch for any director. And then Lady in the Water happens. It's a good movie, but I think it's just like a step down. I think creatively, it's like kind of a misstep. I think maybe like it's personal to a fault, maybe in terms of like how like good, like it might hit too close to home, where it's like him writing about when you put a critic in your movie and you make your critic look like a dunce, it kind of like it's not a great look, like it's maybe not the best creative decision, but I think this movie's good. I think it's really well shot, and I think it's interesting.
Well, that's one of the things.
I'm on board with you.
I don't understand how this movie could be, like I don't know. I'm not gonna talk about the 1-star. More of it's like, I don't think it's possible for this movie to be that negative when it is shot this well. I just don't think that is possible. But I don't know. For me, this is one of his most earnest. Like, he's so like optimistic, heartwarming. I think this is him at his like most vulnerable. And I think that's really interesting to me. On the like bad movie thing, I think there's like this weird like subset of culture where they watch M. Night movies to like laugh and like they're like so bad it's good movies, which I think is like bizarro land.
That's great. No, people talk about some of my favorite M. Night movies like that. Oh, and that's like
Yeah,
complete
like
banana shit to
they
me.
talk about it shit like it's like epic movie or something.
Yeah, they talk about it like
which
they talk about M. Night like he's fucking Tommy Wiseau. Like what
Yeah,
the fuck are we
that's
like? What are we
true.
doing
Neil
here?
Breen.
Like
Kind of
yeah,
segueing
like Neil
perfectly
Breen.
into the next movie. Like,
Yeah, The
kind of-
Happening. The Happening's a good
Oh.
fucking movie. The Happening is a good
not even just a
fucking
good
movie.
movie, a great,
a great movie.
This is.
All-timer.
I don't care as much about defending Lady in the Water, but The Happening, I'm like, just because Lady in the Water doesn't connect with me as much, but like The Happening, when I rewatched it yesterday, I was like, it blows my mind that people think this is like a garbage movie.
Are
Like,
we
if
on
you
The
just think
Happening
it's,
now?
if you think it's
Yeah,
okay,
we're on The Happening now.
yeah.
Oh shit.
Yeah, let's
Yeah.
If you think it's okay, whatever, I could deal with it. I find
so,
it so hard. Like when I rewatch The Happening, and maybe it's just because I've seen it like 4 or 5 times now, so I've gotten used to it. But like when I hear somebody just say that this is like one of the worst movies they've ever seen, I'm like, that is crazy to me.
Cuckoo Bananas Land.
Yeah, so for me,
Okay, go for it,
The
George.
Happening is one of the worst movies I've ever seen. I
That's
think
crazy.
I frequently rank The Last Airbender and The Happening as like the 2 worst movies I've ever seen.
Do you have
The
this at a half star?
Yeah, The Last
Break that down for
Airbender.
me.
The Last Airbender, I will admittedly like. That's just mainly because of my love for the TV show, and I think that movie absolutely shits on it. So I know that movie's not maybe a half a star worthy, but for what it did to the TV show, it's just absolute ass. My thing with M. Night is, just to take you back, I think Doug, you mentioned Tommy Wiseau.
Yeah.
I did not mean to call you Tommy. That was not an insult or anything. But yeah, you guys talk about M. Night like, he cares about his ideas. He cares about, being this, romantic. He cares about, being very personal in his scripts. And while it can come off a little, spoofy, I think, to a casual moviegoer who's not necessarily looking at his ideas or looking at, how personal he is within this film, how much of him is instilled in this film. A lot of people are looking at this like, okay, well, all of that came off, maybe a little bit spoofy to me, because to a casual moviegoer who's not necessarily focusing on, exactly what these characters are saying, the dialogue or the deep themes of the movie, they're sitting there watching, Paul Giamatti overact his ass off, which can come off a little comical. They're sitting there watching Bryce Dallas Howard kind of come off childish, which, yes, it's intended, but it can come off a little spoofy at times. And then same thing with Joaquin's performance in The Village. While it is awesome, and I do think he's one of the shining lights of that movie, to a lot of people, coupling that performance with that odd dialogue style is going to come off a little spoofy to them. And The Happening, to me, is a culmination of everything I hate about M. Night as a filmmaker. It is as obnoxious as possible. I get what he's trying to say about, environmental issues and all that jazz. It just comes off so cringe to me. And this is the most, what did I literally just say about Twitter discourse? This is the most he makes bad movies on purpose type of M. Night movie, where I feel like he genuinely tried to make a bad movie because he thought it would come off intelligent, or he thought it would have more weight on these themes that he's trying to, vocalize to the public. But to me, it just comes off so disgustingly ass. Mark Wahlberg giving the worst performance of his career.
That's crazy.
Maybe
That's
one of the
crazy.
worst.
Have you seen? It's one of his better ones, bro. Have you seen fucking?
I'd argue that Addison Rae and He's All That gave a better performance than Mark Wahlberg in The Happening.
I mean,
we could start Addison Rae discourse if you want, but
we're fans of Addison Rae over here on our podcast. Addison Rae, friend of the pod, come on the show.
I think it's a little among all of those critiques. I think what stood out to me is you saying that it's not very intelligent, because one of my big takeaways, what makes up a lot of my favorite movies, is just like very strong political movies. I don't think there are many filmmakers who could pull off a movie with this good of political commentary. I think it's actually political commentary in several ways.
Yeah.
Especially when you look at this movie as obviously the environmentalism stuff you mentioned. And I think that's a really cool idea. I think it's cool that it's the environment fighting back against people, like the environment killing people after everything we've done to the planet. But I think more specifically, when you look at it as a post 9/11 movie, it is just one of the best examples of capturing the hysteria, the response to how news spreads across the country in a post 9/11 world that we've ever seen on film. It's people seeing anything that scares them and calling it terrorism, which is very much what America looked like post 9/11. It's news spreading faster than the virus does. It's people hearing about what's happening in one part of the country before the contaminated air even gets there, and then the mass hysteria that happens as a result of it. And it's one of those things that, because of what our political landscape in America looks like in the modern day, is going to apply to every post 9/11 situation. Like, you could watch this as a COVID movie and it works entirely. So I just think, the other critiques, it's like, if that's how you feel, that's how you feel. But I think this is a really intelligent movie. I think that few people could have this kind of political commentary in a movie and nail it this much.
Yeah, I mean, The Happening, straight up, I think is the best recreation of 9/11 in cinema. Like the opening scene where all the people die in like by Central Park in New York at the beginning of the movie, right? Like, and then like have that cut to Mark Wahlberg in the school, and then have like, oh, like something's happening in New York in the school. I think that no other filmmaker has recreated 9/11 as powerfully, not as powerfully, but like specifically, and as like with so much couth, as M. Night did in this, in The Happening. It's so like rewatching the movie for the first time in years. I was like, yesterday. This is the only movie I watched to prep for this podcast. Yesterday, I was like, oh my god, I was like, holy shit. And, and like the whole thing is also, it's about like, it's like this crazy commentary on like 9/11 and the Iraq War, and like in a way, because people always talk about the environmental stuff, and I was like, bro, this movie's about the Iraq War, and I'm like, this is crazy. This is fucking crazy what he's doing here in fucking 2008, saying that America deserved 9/11, and like this in like this really insane like couth, like saying the quiet part. It's like whispering the quiet part, and it's like,
I mean, you saw my review already, and like I pointed out the line. There's a line where Kendall Roy, when you texted us, you said Kendall Roy, where Kendall Roy shows up as a like someone in the army, and one of the characters is like, oh, it's the army, we're safe, which is like, I mean, that it is like kind of like these are like these two clashing ideas that the movie presents so well, which is like that, like Americans thinking that the army is a sign of safety, while everything else in the movie is just fear-based. Like there's just so like this whole movie revolves around fear and how we respond to it, and to think that like M. Night, back in 2008 when it wasn't as popular to kind of diss the military, he just went ahead and did that and was like, you guys love the military, but you're scared of all this other stuff. It's just really fascinating. And
I'll also point out that stuff's all cool, but we're fucking nerds and most people don't give a shit. Right.
But
then it's also like even the performances, Zoe Deschanel. I like her performance a lot in this movie.
I do, yeah.
I think that she captures having anxiety and being like an anxious person. I think that she communicates that to the audience very, very well.
Yeah.
I think it's like
she literally reminds me of myself when I'm having a panic attack. Like several moments, I'm like, this is just normal to me.
She is a top tier, like maybe like top 6 M. Night performance. I think she's phenomenal in that movie. I called this movie proto old in my review, but I think it's just more of a natural progression of his dialogue and the way that he writes his characters. I think I called it absurdity matching absurdity. I think you talked about Lady in the Water. I think that's, I don't know what you would call it, but fairy tale kind of dialect matching fairy tale world. I think there is a very interesting thing that he taps into here with the dialogue. But I also would just say that this movie is so visually strong that I think you'd have to be a blind man to call this one of the worst movies of all time.
The shot.
I can't see anything, bro. I can't see a thing.
Bro, George. The shot in this movie, right, where it's like, it's not New York. I think it's in Philadelphia when the virus hits Philadelphia, right? And it's like the guy, and it's the policeman in the car. The policeman shoots himself in the head. The gun drops. The guy gets the hold on the gun. The guy gets out of the car, picks up the gun, shoots himself. The gun drops. Camera pivots. Somebody walks over from the sidewalk to pick up the gun. That shit is crazy. That shit's crazy.
I think
that scene is so good.
Like it's like I don't even think this is one of those movies where it's so like well shot, but I think the way that the Happening works because everything else is so strong as well. But I just don't see how it can be like a 2.0 or something when it is shot this well.
It has a 1.99 average on Letterboxd. Kind of criminal.
I think we've lost our way, and I think we've lost our way. I don't think we really have a grand understanding of the visual medium.
No, people are watching movies like Bryce Dallas Howard in The Village, bro.
What is like, I don't know, because any Netflix movie that will come out with just that looks like garbage.
Heart of Stone probably has a higher fucking average.
Like a 2.5 at least. I just don't believe it. I don't think it is. I don't think most of it is really genuine.
And we always talk about. Sorry, I'm sorry, Owen. We always talk about M. Night's like style being like unnatural and like it feels weird and stuff. It's like he made a whole movie where he uses that as like a strength, where he uses that as like a thematic element, because it's like another thing that stuck out to me when we were watching it. I was like, everything feels fucking fake on purpose. Like instantly, from the very first second of the movie, we're like, oh, this isn't real life, you know? And it's
Yeah.
like he's using that because it's like, you know what happens? Like when the happening happens, real life doesn't feel real anymore, you know?
Yeah.
I don't know.
Well,
It's cool.
I think when we talk about like bad movies on purpose, I think it also not also. I think we're talking about, and well, I'm not saying bad movies on purpose, but I think the more like it kind of gets telephoned into like translated into the wrong thing. I think it is stilted and absurdity most of the time, and not bad. I think going back to the painting, I think it is anti-realism, and I think it is just absurdity. But I think what Doug was saying, I think when things are weird in real life and when things are not normal, like that's just like I don't know. I think it's the perfect portrait of like real life disaster. I think this is like an ultimate disaster movie in terms of like just feeling weird. Yeah, I think Mark Wahlberg's great. I think this movie is incredibly sad. I think this is probably M. Night at his saddest. I think it is almost, we talk about proto knock at the cabin when we're talking about disaster movies and the end of the world. I think that is something that M. Night fears. You talk about family. There's this great sense of like, these are the people I need to protect, and what is going to happen if the world is ending and I don't know what to do and I need to protect these people. I don't know. It's one of those funny movies where it's like people will put this on just to laugh, and I think this movie makes me cry more than it does make me laugh.
Can
I think this movie
It is a little silly
depressing.
also.
It is
Can
silly.
I-
I think there's movies that it's weird. It has a great balance of it. I think there's tons of scenes where I'm laughing because Mark Wahlberg is phenomenal in this movie. I think he's really funny in this movie. But I think it's also I think this movie is just very sad. Like, two kids get shotgunned like point blank, and like you just kind of have to live with that. And I think some people like some of that could be played as like jokes, but I think there's almost this like weird balance of like horror and comedy kind of like on the same wavelength, but it's almost playing with like horror and like really sad shit, and comedy at like the same time. I think really is interesting.
I wanted to mention, because you say it's sad, the last thing I wanted to talk about is the ending of the movie, because we were talking about how smart he is and how like politically aware this movie is. And when you put all the post 9/11 politics stuff aside and you just look at it as like a climate change movie, there's, like the ending is extremely sad because this thing happens, like the happening happens, right? And if you look at it as a metaphor for climate change, it happens in this one like distinct area of the country. And then it just ends, and then everything like goes on, and then the ending is just it happening in another place, which it, like is just so clearly like the best metaphor you can make for climate change, because it's just all of these outbursts of climate disasters happening all over the planet and people just not really caring one after the other until it's too late eventually. Which, like, yeah, when you say it's sad, it's just like most of his movies are pretty hopeful. This one is just kind of like, oh, this is just going to keep happening over and over again until we actually like do something about it. Like, you guys survived that first one, and there's just going to be more.
One thing I love about film is like listening to people talk about movies they love, because I know we're not going to agree on M. Night, we're just not, but like listening to the three of you like genuinely like love this man and his movies just like warms my heart, because like that's the way I talk about other filmmakers, and just listening to you guys just defend the shit out of this man is just very heartwarming at how much you like love his filmography.
Do you want to say where we have it in his ranking?
Second to last.
I have it 9th, but I have it at 3 stars, so I think it's okay.
It's too high.
Yeah, for me, there's two M. Night movies that I kind of like. I'm just gonna like remove myself, obviously, other than the ones I haven't seen. But The Happening and Old are the two that like I can't really speak on, because The Happening was like the perfect storm for me to not like it, because this is the first M. Night movie I ever saw, and it was when my fiance, at the time girlfriend but not fiance, were in Universal Studios, and we were like a whole day we were like walking around the park like super tired, got back to our hotel, and we're like, let's just throw on a movie. And we did, like, this was when like it probably like just released on Netflix, so it's like the classic, like you open Netflix, it's like the big banner movie. So like, sure, throw it on. I've never been like a huge Mark Wahlberg guy. I mean, I love him in like Boogie Nights,
Nobody
and,
should be a huge Mark Wahlberg.
Yeah.
On it.
Yeah.
and I really don't like Zoe Deschanel. Like I'm not a New Girl guy like at all. So like this is like
Oh, New Girl's so fun though.
love
nah,
New
I
Girl.
know it's a hot take. It's whatever. New Girl and Friends are both just like incredibly mid. To me,
Oh,
but-
I can't.
No,
I think
like
Friends is so much worse than New Girl.
Oh,
Okay,
stop.
but
This is great.
But so basically, it's like two actors I don't love. M. Night, like I literally have never seen a movie of his, so I had no clue what to expect, and I was just exhausted from the day of like walking around the park the whole time. So right now I have a 1 star. I don't know if that's an excuse, and if like I
Too
rewatch
high.
it, it still could be a 1 star. But yeah, like literally, like that's why I just didn't really talk to him. That's because like this,
Yeah,
my
no,
my
I
opinion
think-
doesn't really matter.
No, that was
I
a
think
glimpse
you
of what the Looks Like a Movie podcast is like when we all
Yeah.
agree on the movie.
I
it's
think
my
you
number-
should-
it's
I
my
would
number
be
3 for
interested
him.
to see you rewatch it, Tyler, because I do think you'd probably enjoy it more.
I think it's
This
kind
is
of a
one
wild movie to be the first M. Night someone watches.
Yeah, what is so much of like him? It's style heavy for what he's doing.
That's
this is
crazy.
sick.
Did
This
you
is
wait,
sick
Tyler?
for
Did you
me.
watch movies as a kid? Like, did you watch movies growing up and stuff?
Yeah, but some reason M. Night. Like, I mean, like what M. Night movie really appeals to a kid though?
Like, The
Like,
Sixth
Sixth
Sense. I
Sense.
watched the movie when I was really
I
young.
watched
was
The
my-
Sixth Sense, and
Mine
This was
too.
my first M. Night movie as
I
well.
avoided any dude. I was like the most chicken person ever. Like to me as a kid, like that was probably
Okay,
like
that makes
Insidious
sense.
level to me.
I
Like,
remember.
okay.
Like my parents, like I was watching Shutter Island with my parents as a kid when I was like young, and like the opening scene started, and they were going to that insane asylum, and I like started hyperventilating and went upstairs. Like this is too much for me. Shutter Island, like I'm out, guys. Like almost started crying in my family's living room. Like this is too intense for me, guys.
I remember watching The Happening. When did that came out? What, 07?
2008.
2008.
Yeah, it was 07,
So
08.
yeah, what was that? I was like 12, so I wasn't even that young. But I remember sitting in the living room with my parents watching The Happening, and the scene comes on where everyone like just walks off a building.
Yeah.
And I remember watching that scene,
That shit rocks.
traumatized, and I was like, I'm going to my room.
I
I'm not
actually
watching
had the exact same experience. I had that. This was also my first M. Night movie because I had this on Blu-ray and I put it in my PlayStation. And I remember watching that scene when everybody jumps off the building, and I was like, "This movie's terrifying." And I was like 8 years old or 9 years old or whatever. I was like, "Damn, that's actually really fucking scary."
I remember because the shot. You know what? I'll praise
Yeah.
M. Night. The shot of that is really cool because like the camera is
Yeah.
like right underneath, so people are just heading straight towards the camera.
Yeah.
And I remember sitting there like a traumatized 12-year-old. I'm like, I should not be watching this movie right now.
Well, that covers The Happening. I think we all knew going into this that was going to be the one that was going to be the most dense for discussion. So we're going to talk about it the most. So I'm happy we spent a good amount of time on it. Next,
there
The
is
Last
one more.
Airbender. We'll start with George because obviously he's a huge
knock this one out quick.
Avatar The Last Airbender fan. You have the tattoo, right? You have a tattoo. Is that the one right on your wrist right there?
Yeah.
So obviously you're like a massive fan. So this movie, not so much. Go ahead. You get to start this one.
Yeah, first off, Doug and Owen, I've seen you guys tweet about the Last Airbender TV show, how only children like that show.
Yeah.
We won't talk.
Okay,
No, it's
okay,
cool.
wait, no, I liked it as a kid. I had it all. I had the whole series on DVD. I would like make my babysitter play it and stuff. I tried to rewatch it as like an adult over
It's
the
a kid's
pandemic,
show.
and I was like, it's a kid's show. I
It's
couldn't get
fully
into
a
it.
kid's show. No,
Yeah.
I will not argue against that at all. It is fully a kid's show, but I just love that show for just I grew up on it. It meant so much to me as a kid. So I just absolutely love that show. And again, like I said earlier, my half a star on this movie is probably very deflated just because of what the show means to me. And I think this movie comes
I think
in
that's
basically,
you and every other person that gave it a half star.
yeah, probably. Like this
Not
movie
me.
came in. This movie came in and basically shit on every single amazing aspect of the show. There was a lot of characters. There were a lot of stories that just were not reminiscent of the TV show. He excluded a lot of characters like the Kyoshi Warriors, which I think was just absolutely wild. But yeah, it's just one of those things where I haven't rewatched this movie in years. I don't plan on it. I'm going to leave it at a half a star just because of my hate towards it. Even if I rewatch it and I'm like, oh, it's not that bad, I'd still probably leave it at a half a star. just because just because of how much I dislike what it does to the TV show. But again,
Question,
I know
George, is it like a? Would you say like if you took out your love for the show? I've not seen it. Is it actually that bad as a film?
I mean, I
No,
still
it's
think
not.
it is a
It's
bad
not.
film, but it's probably not half a star bad. If
But
I'm being-
I'll say this. I agree. I think this movie's bad. I do. I watched it for our own M Night pod that we did like
Yeah.
6, 7, 8 months ago. I rewatched it because I hadn't seen it since I was in the theater as a kid. And I rewatched it now so far removed from my relationship with the show. And I was just like, yeah, it's a bad adaptation. Like it's a misguided adaptation of the source material. But like the movie's like it's just kind of a bad action movie, you know? It's like
Yeah, it's just a
Yeah.
regular bad movie.
It's just a
Yeah.
it's just like okay for me. It's my like lowest ranked film. It's like
But
one of those
yeah,
things where it's like I
Like
don't
you
know.
guys also said, like M. Night just came off of this, Sixth Sense through The Village run.
Yeah.
And now he did Lady in the Water and The Happening, which were, I know you guys love the movies, but they're
But
not very
like the general
critically-
public critics didn't like it.
Yeah, they're
the
not
general
very
public didn't like
critically
it.
received or audience received. So I guess I believe it was Doug or Owen who mentioned it. Like, okay, let's make this Last Airbender movie maybe to, regain my mass appeal to the general public, and just backfired on him like fucking crazy.
Yeah, I will say though, like this. I'm sorry, I feel like I'm dominating, but with the Last Airbender, very specifically with this movie, I feel so bad for M. Night as a human being because this is not his fault. This like he gets the most shit for this
Yeah,
movie.
that
This
too.
is not his fault. This movie is like
It's hard when you have any IP adaptation to have full control as a director. But for me, like just to Seth's comment, so I'm probably like the most middle of the road M. Night guy here. Like I tend to like him, but I definitely dislike some of his films. But I'm not as high as the three guys on the bottom. So I'd say for me, I'd only seen the first season ever of the original Avatar show. So and I never had like a personal attachment to it ever. So didn't really care like if like the adaptation was bad or not in terms of like ruining my perception of the show. But I genuinely like just objectively thought this is not objectively, but in terms of like bias of the show aside, I just thought it was a bad movie. Like I really did not enjoy it. I was quite bored. I thought all the kid performances were quite rough, which like shout out Dev Patel for like going on to the career he had after this. Cause like low key could have been like a career killer for someone trying to break out in the
his
hall.
career.
But yeah, so shout out to him. But I really didn't enjoy any like the kid castings, which it's always really hard to get right in like any kids movie adaptation. But yeah, it's just I didn't care for the action. You guys know, like for me, like same thing like 65. If someone tries to make like an action engaging story and they miss, like I'm like super harsh on it. Just like for me, like not like I try to be, it's just like I just get so completely zoned out, like, and I'm just like I hate this movie so much. Like 65 and The Last Airbender are kind of similar for me in that.
I love Owen's letterbox review of The Last Airbender. I mean, it's not that bad.
Yeah,
true.
well,
I mean, that's like
kinda
an
my
accurate
thoughts on
assessment of
it.
the movie. Yeah, like
Because I think it's fine. Like I think it's just a fine kids movie, which is like okay. It's like when Doug talks about like it's not more of his movie. I think it's just it's like a weird movie to even defend because it's like I don't think it's that great. I think it is annoying when people will be online and will basically
pisses
be
me
like,
off.
oh, like M. Night will have a new like Knock at the Cabin came out and everyone was like, oh, this is the guy that made The Last Airbender. We're not watching this, basically. And I think I've mentioned this before to like Doug and Kevin. I think someone commented this on one of my things, and it was basically like if David Lynch has made Dune, right, and then every film he made after that, everyone was like, oh, this is the guy that made Dune.
Yeah.
I'm not watching this, which is like a okay movie of a bad adaptation. I think the difference is that it is A, social media, and B, it is a kid's thing, because I think people get really attached to these kids. Yeah. Which I totally understand it. I totally get why people don't like it. I don't like it, really. It's not a movie I really think about that much. I think it's fine.
The funny
it's
thing
just-
is for The Last Airbender, and I'll let the three guys at the bottom correct me if I'm wrong here. I feel like this is one of the movies very obviously where it's not. It's an M. Night movie, but it's not really his movie. It's not really his voice.
Yeah.
It's not really his
Yeah.
lens. I feel like if M. Night genuinely wanted to adapt The Last Airbender the way he wanted to adapt it, I think this would have been like a PG-13 R-rated movie that does not appeal to kids at all.
maybe I think M. Night just doesn't care about the show. I think
Yeah.
that
I
he just
don't
wouldn't
think-
want to do it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, we just talked about it before. I think it's just like he was kind of he likes. We talk about one location, smaller things. He's worked with bigger casts before, but I think this is just way too big of a thing for him, where he didn't really know how to handle it.
Was it
And
really
like,
high budget?
Yeah, I think it was like 100-something million.
Shit.
It was just like they were. I don't know. It's a weird
150
kind of
million.
yeah. It's a weird thing where it's like.
I also
I
I think it made money too.
I'm
Really?
sure
Oh,
it
for
did.
sure,
Yeah, I'm
probably.
confident.
I
it
remember
did.
seeing it in theaters.
Yeah, I saw it in theaters. But you guys have been talking a lot of this runtime about how M. Night kind of has this thing for water, and season 1 of The Last Airbender, which is what this movie adapted, is called Book One, Water. So I wonder, like, I know, if he does love, water as much as you guys
there's
make
like
it
a
out to
world
be.
where he does like an interesting kind of spiritual water thing,
Yeah.
But no,
don't think-
my thing is, like, I feel like he may have agreed to tackle this movie because he expected himself to have a lot more creative freedom and kind of work in this, love of water or whatever he loves telling, and then I guess got there and they just didn't give him, the voice that he wanted.
I don't think there's a world where M. Night makes a good adaptation. I think there's a world where he makes a good movie. I don't think he. I don't think he was.
That's what I was. That's
The
what I was
Last
about to
Airbender.
say. Because if he had full
Yeah.
creative control, this movie might even get more hate, just because so many of the people who hate it just talk about, like you said, like it's just not the TV show.
Yeah,
so
because
it's like,
I think people Last Airbender fans, because like I think that the Last Airbender hive is really kind of crazy. I think there are a lot of crazy people in there. Not even just crazy in a bad way, but I mean like really crazy about the show, And I think that it's like for an adaptation for them, it has to be like they want like a super fan to like make it and like be like and like have it be like kind of like maybe a little fan servicey, but like very accurate, and like just like there's no way he's a fan of the show. Like
We can probably leave The Last Airbender there. I think that's the one like most people can agree on, whether you love M. Night or hate M. Night. I think everyone kind of agrees. It's just like not great. Next up, this one. So we're not going to go in depth into this one, but he, at this point in his career, no, I'm not talking about After Earth. At this point in his career, he wrote and produced Devil would be the next like film he kind of worked on. Based on your Letterboxd reviews, both Seth, Doug, and those are the only ones that have it logged. Just 2.5, 3 stars. So very just like middle of the road. But just I haven't logged it, but I've seen Devil. I thought the same. I was like, it was. I didn't hate watching it. Yeah,
I just
want to
director
throw
page. Yeah, he wrote Devil, right? Yeah,
wrote,
that movie's
and
cool.
he was the main producer, so I just like threw that in,
shit.
just
The
kind of just because
elevator
we're going
one?
like his timeline.
Yeah,
this
the
is like
elevator
when
one.
this is
Oh,
when
yeah,
Devil
yeah,
kind of hit.
I didn't
don't
know he
much
wrote
about
that
that
one.
one.
Yeah, that movie's cool. It's like I mean, it's not. It would have been better if he directed it, but it's also like not
especially
like
in the elevator, one shot, one scene. Yeah.
yeah.
It was a weird film.
But then, of course, the next movie he directed was After Earth, starring the father-son duo Will and Jaden Smith. 2013 is when this came out. This is one that for me, I didn't think it was terrible. I just didn't love it. I think I gave it like a
Yeah, I'm same as you.
1.5. I can't remember what my main critiques were, so I'll go try and refresh myself while you guys talk about it. But I definitely didn't hate it nearly as much as like The Last Airbender, but I didn't love it. And I don't know if this is one where it's like The Happening for you, where it's like
All timer.
this is all
Movie
timer.
rocks.
Yeah.
All timer. No,
All-timer.
this is a big Doug and Owen movie. This is
not
this
so
movie
much,
is
not
like
so much a me movie, but a them movie for
Oh,
sure.
baby.
no.
Well, so
bro,
I
After
don't
Earth
know.
is like the foundation of me and Owen's friendship in a lot of ways.
So we talk about Wide Awake as a Harvey Weinstein movie. After Earth is way more of a Will Smith movie than an M. Night movie, so it almost feels weird in the ranking itself, or even just talking about it, because I
After
do
Earth
think
is
it's
such a
so
fucking
much of a Will
interesting
Smith
movie.
project. But I do think a lot of it like does work to M. Night's strengths. I think Will Smith wrote it. I think Gary Whitta helped. Yeah, Gary doesn't even like the movie; he trashes it on Twitter. But it is more of like Will Smith brings on M. Night and being like, "Hey, this is my idea. Help me, do my idea." But it, obviously, the father-son thing really works for me. I think Jaden Smith's whole character and his anxiety, and him just like entering this new world and having to kind of. It is very interesting, and especially like a time of my life right now. I think it is very important to me. I love this movie. I think I like Jaden a lot. I think I like Will a lot. I think it's very interesting just having two actors and kind of there is this weird meta aspect of it all of Will kind of have to step back and letting Jaden kind of be his own person.
I would say
but
there's a huge cool ass.
Oh yeah,
aspect.
there's like a giant like meta like thing. Like this movie is just a 1-to-1 kind of representation of Jaden and Will's kind of real life relationship. That's really interesting to me.
Yeah, like Will Smith was like, "Yo, dog." No, literally, this is okay. Sorry.
Yo, dog.
Will Smith is a fucking kind of probably a bad dad. I mean, I'm just like outside looking in. Okay, outside looking in.
Yeah,
I don't
yeah,
know him real life. This is all Hollywood shit, But like outside looking in, from what the information we get, because like Will Smith basically told fucking Jaden and Willow, he was like, man, I only know how to make movies. So if you guys if you guys want me to be a present father, you guys got to be in movies. That's crazy. So then like they tried to be in movies, and this was like, you know, Jaden Smith, he did like I almost said Kung Fu Panda, Karate Kid. He did the Karate Kid movie or whatever, and now this is like Jaden Smith is like older. He's like, you know, a little bit older, and this is him doing After Earth, and this was like Will Smith being like, okay, dude, this is on you now. Like you gotta. You're the fucking Will Smith like insisted that Jaden Smith be top billed in After Earth, and he was like, you gotta carry this whole fucking movie, this whole M. Night Shyamalan movie, and then and in the movie, obviously, it's all about, you know, Will Smith is a military guy, and he gets hurt, and then he has to look at his son, and he's like, you got to do this on your own, buddy. It's very interesting. And then Jaden Smith hated, and then he never was in a movie again.
Yeah. It comes at a weird time where I always think of this like Straw Hat Goofy video where he's like, oh, this trailer looks interesting, and then he sees M. Night's name and then he like sighs. I think
I saw that video.
That's like the peak of this.
I did not.
Yeah,
see that
so
video.
it's the peak of that, but it is also Jaden Smith. People don't really like Jaden Smith here. Like, it's like, we're tired of this kid in every Will Smith movie.
It's like
so
all Jaden Smith goodwill is gone by this point.
So it is like, oh, enough of this kid already. We liked Will Smith, but come on, stop pushing this kid on me. And then Will's like, he's top billed, and M. Night's gonna direct it. And then it's like,
and then you start watching the movie, and it's like Will Smith is doing this weird fucking accent, and everybody's like, what the hell is going on?
I was gonna mention that. Will Smith and accents is weird for me because, of course, Concussion is another one where he had a really wild accent, and I just anytime he has to pull off like anything other than his normal speaking voice, it just like really takes me out of the movie. Like Concussion with the whole like tell the truth, like, and never memeing that over and over.
Yeah. Even King Richard, he had a pretty
King
big
Richard,
accent.
Like,
doesn't he? I haven't seen it, but doesn't he do a really good job playing Muhammad Ali with like the nuances of like his speech patterns and stuff?
Oh, he's fantastic in that.
He's great in that movie.
Is
Yeah,
that
that's a
Mann's?
Michael Mann movie.
Yeah,
So I mean,
right.
But yeah, it's a weird. I don't know, like about the promotional stuff or something, but I could very well understand people going into this, but like, oh, Will Smith, and then he like is like injured in a plane for the movie, like, and then people like hating it on that. Yeah, I think this is a really weird artifact of M. Night's career that doesn't entirely fit, but sort of fits, and it's not like his favorite movie, obviously, because it's a for hire thing. But I don't have any issues with it.
But even like talking about the Will Smith of it is also really interesting because like people, somebody on Twitter on fucking Owens mentions, I think, was like, bro, because I was like, After Earth is a good movie, whatever, something I would say, something unlikely to say, and then somebody like replied to me, some fucking glub shitto replied to me and was like, bro, don't you know that After Earth is Scientologist propaganda? And I was like, you haven't seen the movie if you think it's like just straight up Scientology propaganda. And he linked me like a Vulture article, and I'm like, bro, watch the movie. Like, but it is true though, and I think it goes like Will Smith met with Tom Cruise. Tom Cruise kind of like got him into fucking Dianetics, which is like a Scientology thing, and it's like interesting. It's something that actors get roped into a lot because like Dianetics is all about like having full mastery of your emotions. And this movie's all about fucking Dianetics, and it's all about like you know, you have to control your fear. Like, fear is a choice, emotion is a choice. You can argue that's problematic, right? I would argue it's cool.
I think it works wonders.
Yeah. Anyways, this movie rocks. Now you guys talk about why it's a half star.
No, like one thing like I was really impressed with this movie because like. Again, like I was really late to the M. Night train, so by the time I've seen all his movies, except obviously Knock at the Cabin, all the discourse is kind of already out at this point about the movie. Actually, by the way, Old was my first M. Night movie, not The Happening. But After Earth, the visual effects and like everything from a technical aspect, like actually really blew me away when I watched this for the first time a couple months ago. I was like, this is actually like a really good looking movie, and it's 10 years ago, so I guess it's not like that long ago. But I think visually it looks really great. I just didn't love. And I know, like, it probably makes sense with, like, it'd be interesting to revisit because the meta aspect you guys are talking about between, like, how the relationship is between Will and Jaden in real life. But I didn't really, like, get much from their relationship in this movie. And I just don't know. I'm not a Jaden Smith guy. And obviously he kind of has to put this whole movie on his back. So if you're not really digging his performance, it's going to kind of fall apart a bit. But one thing that's interesting that Owen mentioned is, like, or on Twitter. Like I can't remember where you said this. You said like acting like isn't real or something. You said like performances like there's no such thing as a good or bad performance.
Likely
like,
thing for him to say.
Really interested to see what you mean by that.
I don't think it really sways me. I think it is more. I'm talking about this in the Lady in the Water thing, but it's like writing isn't really that real for me either. It is more of like what we're doing with writing and what we're doing with acting than the actual writing or acting themselves.
But isn't acting isn't that what acting is though? Taking
but it's more
doing
of
something
like
with it?
it's less of like a good or bad thing, and then like more of an emotional thing. It's less of, or maybe it's, I guess, realism. Like it's a weird way to like word it.
It's just a trolly way of putting it. It's, it's like getting a reaction out of it.
It's a trolly way to put it. I think Jaden is wonderful. I think he does exactly what I want him to do. I think has like a really raw emotion to him.
He plays a freaked out 14-year-old because that's what he would be in this fucking movie, is a freaked out 14-year-old that's like trying to be a grown up, but he's not.
The accents don't bother me because I'm not really picking up on that as much.
The accents were a swing and a miss, but I think it's a really interesting swing.
I don't think there's one thing with this movie that I think is quite interesting, and I think I talked about like there's nothing wrong with it. I don't think it's necessarily something wrong with it, but I think it would have been viewed better in the public eye if Earth wasn't so bland. Because it doesn't affect me when I'm watching the movie, but if I were to make this movie like the perfect movie, Earth would have been weirder. I disagree. Yeah, I disagree. I don't hate it, but I also think like if I were to make like the coolest version of this, I think Earth would have been a little weirder. But I think there's like this funny story of like them selling like this like Jaden Smith toy, and it's just like Jaden Smith and like it's like
no merchandise.
Generic. Yeah.
There was one figure made. It was just a Jaden Smith action figure, and that's it. It was the only piece of merchandise made. It was a prototype. After they made it, the movie came out, it fucking, like, the movie bombed, they canceled the production line. No merchandise was made for this movie.
Yeah. And there's this whole like book of like all the things in it. I think there's a lot of interesting stuff going on.
Will Smith thought this was going to be Avatar. Will Smith went into this, made this movie thinking he was making Avatar.
Yeah. What if James Cameron made this movie?
Stop.
He did. It's called Avatar, and it's better. But
I know. But I there's nothing that's not a negative for me. But I do think people would have liked it more if that was the case.
I will say I think I'll go on the record on the ReelTok Podcast episode 54 and say that After Earth is the most underrated movie of all time. Like straight up. I look at I'm on the page right now on my phone. The Letterboxd page, a 1.7. That's like blasphemous. That's so crazy.
I don't know if you could name another 1.7 movie that's that good.
I like this much good stuff going for it.
I think Tyler mentioned the visual stuff. I mean, like that's what M. Night was really here to kind of aid. There's this great like kind of like sheet thing that like is like weighing back. That's probably one of my favorite like all-time M. Night little scenes. I think that's great. There's really nothing wrong with it. I think it hits home with me emotionally, and I think the performances are really interesting. And that whole meta aspect is bizarre. It's an interesting movie. I think we have a lot of non-interesting movies. There's so many movies that are not interesting, and I think for this movie to be so interesting, there's just so much to kind of talk about.
Yeah, there. I mean, there's like 300 movies that come out every year on Netflix alone that are like worse than this movie.
There's just not a thought there. There's nothing to really grab on, and I think there's so much here. There's so much interesting stuff, and I think the worst thing you could kind of do as a filmmaker is make something uninteresting. Something like Wide Awake. I think that's the antithesis of like, studio like garbage, bland, copy and paste. And I think this is, it's set, it kind of put in this weird like for hire era, but I think this is really interesting as well. Way more interesting than the other.
Do you have anything to add on the After Earth discourse?
I haven't seen After Earth in a while. I don't actually hate it. I'm kind of the same as you, Tyler, where I think visually it was really good. I didn't really feel that much of a dynamic because I don't particularly like Jaden Smith. I think that kind of requires that. But I think I should rewatch it because it's been a couple of years. I currently have it like a 2-star, so like just below average. It's not something I hate, but it's not something I'm itching to watch again. But I kind of, it's one of those where I get why people love it, but I also simultaneously really get why people don't like it. I'm just very meh on it. I don't have any strong opinions towards it.
Yeah, I'd absolutely love to dump on this movie right now, but I'll give it the benefit of the doubt because I haven't seen it. I saw this movie once ever. It was in theaters with my dad, and we both walked out.
I'm gonna throw it out there,
That's
George.
such a
I don't
dad
think this is
movie.
I don't think this is the movie for you, dog.
Yeah, listen.
I don't think you need to rewatch it.
You're onto something there, Doug.
But something that is George's speed because he's a big found footage guy.
Yeah. Let me.
Is this your like favorite M Night movie? The
This
Visit.
is my number one ranked M
Is
Night.
it?
Oh,
So
wow.
we're
George
kicking off with
King.
you. Let's go.
Yeah, The Visit is my number one ranked M Night movie. For Kevin, Doug, and Owen, if you guys don't know, I'm a big found footage guy. I'm a big sucker for found footage. If you look at like my Letterboxd stats, where it's like movies rated higher than average, most of them are found footage films. I just absolutely love that style of filmmaking. I think it makes for such just a fucking uncomfortable experience, and I think M. Night excelled in it completely, just basically putting a camcorder in the hands of a children and letting these children kind of guide the story, which I just think makes this such a more tense and haunting experience because you're kind of watching this found footage film through the eyes of a child. And you're kind of like reacting to what they're reacting to in a way that a child would react to it, which is to scream and cry and be very, very fucking scared. This is also one of those movies where I think M. Night excels in comedy more than any of his other films.
There's some funny shit.
I think there are just so many iconically hilarious lines. One of the grandparents asks this kid why his pants are so low, and he looks at her dead in the eye, and he goes, "I rap." I cried at that line.
No, that's so funny. That kid is so cool.
Yeah, that kid was just like so cool, but he was just like, it was like so middle school, early onset SoundCloud rapper vibes,
Yeah.
which I thought was just fucking hilarious.
No, yeah.
But
I find
yeah.
it really interesting, George. This is your number one because I feel like The Visit for me. I like The Visit. I have a 3.5. I think The Visit's good. I think it's a cool film. But I think The Visit sits in this like fine line where it's not like The Happening, but it's not like a Signs where there's no real strong opinions attached to it most of the time. I think most people just identify it as like a decent film, which is what I see. So I'm kind of surprised to see this as your number one, but then I'm not because I know how much you love found footage.
But
I think
again,
it works, man. I think it's quite scary at points. I think it's comedic. I think the elements really work. I think it's a unique style I enjoyed. And I remember, not to harp on the twist with M. Night, but I think the twist in this one really actually works for me. And I think this is just a cool little fun watch.
That's also another thing with M. Night. And again, obviously, I see M. Night's filmography a bit differently than the three gentlemen at the bottom of the screen. But this is the one movie that like genuinely like resonated with me. Like I was thinking about this movie for a while after having seen it. I started recommending it to people literally the second that the end credits started rolling. I was texting people. I was like, dude, you got to watch The Visit. I remember I immediately DM'd Sydney and I was like, I cannot believe I'm about to say this, but I think I just
Shout out
loved.
Sydney.
Yeah, shout out Sydney. I was like, I think I just loved an M. Night movie, which is crazy. But yeah, again, it's also one of my 5 M. Night 3.5s. So like all 5 of those movies are very interchangeable for me. I like them all a good chunk. I will say my 1 and 2 and my number 2 is split. I go back and forth on those being 1 and 2 quite often, but at the end of the day, I'm just such a sucker for found footage. I think it's just such a creative and just hauntingly realistic way to tell a horror.
It's
to
better
tell.
than Blow.
So,
No, it's
George,
not.
Yeah.
we have a friend and frequent co-host on our podcast that he comes on a lot of episodes.
Okay.
I was talking to him last night because I was telling, and he also listens to your guys' podcast
Who
a
is
lot. His name. I don't
Is
know
it
if I should
Rough
say.
Take?
No, you can say it.
Is it like
Yeah,
someone-
it's Rough Take. It's Max.
Okay,
High Five If You're Still Alive and
Yeah.
Rough Take on TikTok. He does listen to your guys' podcast a lot. I was talking to him last night, and I was telling him that like, oh yeah, like we're going on ReelTok tomorrow morning to talk about M. Night, and he told me to ask you why you act like you like horror when you don't like horror movies.
What does that mean? I love horror movies.
Yeah, no, he was like, yeah, I don't know. Last night he was so funny. He was like, that man does not like horror movies, and he keeps pretending he does.
His last
do
like
I-
30 logs on Letterboxd are nothing but horror right now. for
Why do
George.
I
Probably
not-
the main thing me and George
I don't
speak
know.
about, honestly.
Yeah.
What does that mean? I love.
I don't know. I just thought. Well, I just wanted to bring that. I thought that was a good time to bring
Have
it
you
up.
got like a favorite
I-
horror film that George
I-
didn't like or
Yeah.
something?
I guess I don't love horror. I guess I'm wasting my time watching all these movies
horror.
and rating them highly.
Yeah, I just want to throw that out there because that's something he wanted me to bring up, and he does listen to your guys' podcast.
Well, shout out him.
Yeah,
shout out
him.
Yeah, shout out Max.
He's a true fan, by the way.
He does listen to your guys' podcast.
He listens
That's
to
not a
your
joke.
podcast more than I think any podcast.
Yeah.
He talks about you guys a
yours?
lot.
As he should.
Yeah. Oh,
Yeah, well, he's on ours a
listens
lot.
To, yeah, he listens to every
but-
episode of ours, but he listens to every episode of your podcast.
Yeah,
as
but he
well.
doesn't tell us about ours. He tells us
Yeah,
about
he talks
yours.
about
Well, then
yours a lot.
that means
That's
he's
where we get
listening to
our
this right
real
now.
talk.
So comment why you think George hates
Yeah, why do I
horror.
know?
We need
I
answers.
think, I think
Damn, I
in the
didn't know I
past
hated
it
horror
would be
movies.
like we would watch some horror movie that would be like not like entirely loved by everyone, and you would always have like a negative rating towards it.
Yeah.
I don't kind of
mean-
pulling this back to The Visit.
Yeah,
There are
sorry.
definitely horror movies out there I don't like.
Oh, like you didn't like Skinamarink. That was a big one.
Oh, right.
Yeah, that shit was doo doo.
Shout out to Number Shout out Kyle Edward Ball.
We would need a whole
friend of the
separate
pod.
podcast episode.
Yeah, we can do
Yeah,
that.
We're not doing
We are not getting into Skinamarink right now.
We can
I
do
will
that
say,
eventually.
Kevin has really strong opinions about Deanna Dunnigan, the lead grandma
stop
in this
it.
movie.
No, we are not talking about this.
Wood?
We can talk about this on our podcast.
Well, yeah, is this a Wood moment?
Yes, yeah, very much so for
That's
Kevin.
crazy.
On the record.
I'm not gonna speak on a podcast that's gonna get way more views. I'm not gonna,
We speak about shit. You
Is it like a situation like that episode of The Office where they made up that movie with Jack Black and that grandma, and they had that? Have
you
seen
can't do
that
office.
episode?
You can't do office references with me.
Oh, you don't watch it? Okay.
It's just no comment. But you guys know the real ones know.
Real K Meeks heads know.
All right, we'll move on to Split. So 1 year after The Visit, 17 years after, 15 years, 16 years after Unbreakable. So kind of revisiting that universe with. Obviously, everyone knows James McAvoy's performance is absolutely incredible. I made the take on the podcast the other day that I think like any competent actor would be viewed as very incredible in that role, just because they're given so much range in the writing. And it's kind of hard that if you're like a really good actor, I think anyone like Joaquin Phoenix, I think would have like killed that role, or any strong actor.
I
but-
agree. I
but
think
still-
Joaquin
still he
Phoenix is
did
like a
good.
bad example because like Joaquin Phoenix is so high. I do think James McAvoy is like the really
Yeah.
high tier.
I don't know
I
if
think
James
James-
McAvoy gets his flowers enough.
He
Yeah,
does
I think
that.
James McAvoy's kind of like.
I think everyone gives him his
awesome.
flowers for that movie, though.
Not
I think
enough.
everyone says
They
that.
do.
This
They
is
do
like
for that
an-
film.
This
They
is
do for that
kind of
film.
like an all-time performance. I think. I do
Yeah.
think he's
And
really good here.
You know what? I kind of disagree. I'm going to push back on your point a little bit. I think that if it was a different actor, maybe even like traditionally a better actor in this role, I think it might be worse. I think it might be worse. I think because James McAvoy, I think, is very well casted, because when like James McAvoy in like The Shaven Head, he's such a blank slate. He's such just a fucking like default video game character white guy that it like
He is
allows
literally
him.
NPC.
Yeah, that allows him to like transform into all these different characters and
He's
it be
kind
kind of
of a
interesting.
chameleon.
If
in
it were
this,
Joaquin
like-
Phoenix already has that like baseline character,
Yeah.
that is like I think it would be harder for him to chameleon like the James McAvoy NPC like blank slate. I don't know. Anyways, but
Like a
is-
Sims character kind of thing. I know. What you
yeah,
mean.
like a
This
Sims
is
character,
my-
or like Starfield. You open up Starfield, that's the first thing you see is
The
James
first-
McAvoy and the
yeah.
character. Yeah,
This is my James McAvoy in Split. I think is what I consider to be the best performance in any M Night movie.
valid.
Yeah,
That's
I think,
an interesting
I think a
question.
lot of people would
that's a
agree with
fair
that.
opinion.
I thought he was.
I think
I-
99.9% of people would agree with that.
Yeah, I think he's fucking brilliant in the movie. His performance in that movie is the reason why I hold that movie so highly, even though I do think it's a very intriguing movie, an intriguing concept. It's my number 2 ranked M. Night film, but James McAvoy just stunned me in that film.
I think it's great. I think it's number 3 for me. I really, really like Split. I think it's fantastic. Like, Split is one of those films where it hasn't kind of gone down for me over time. The first time I watched it, and I've watched it again and again. Like, I think it's really, really good. But
Split's
yeah, James
like-
McAvoy's amazing.
Kind of towards the bottom for me. I'm not gonna lie.
Is it?
Yeah,
What's
I-
Well,
your
it's like in the
rating?
middle. It's like in the middle for me. Actually, it's in the middle. I give it a 3.5.
Oh, so no,
um,
yeah, not too far from
That's
Yeah.
what I
number-
give it. Doug. Me
that's
and
my
Doug
number
are on the
8.
same wavelength right now.
No, my twin over here, real.
Yeah, like I hated it when the first time I saw it, not the movie, but the end scene. But I kind of love it now because it's so funny. Like it's clearly like to me just sarcastic take on superhero movies, where it's like the reveal of David Dunn in the bar at the end was so corny and dumb and like so silly.
Yeah, the
but I
twist
feel like
of
that's
this is
just
that
like
it's a sequel.
yeah, I feel like that's like the whole like I feel like that's kind of what he's like going for there, where it's like every superhero movie ends with like a big reveal of like where we're going next, and like that's what, when I was in the bar, I just like facepalm, like that's like such a silly way to tie in David Dunn.
He's
But
so
knowing,
funny.
and again, the three gentlemen at the bottom can correct me if I'm wrong. Knowing M. Night, I feel like that was his take on like making fun of the fact that everything is like a connected universe.
Right, yeah.
Every like M. Night just feels like it feels like he had an entire script written without that ending scene, and he's like, you know what? Let's just fuck with people right
No,
now.
I think
So
that he
the-
had an idea for Glass.
The
Did he?
character of that James McAvoy plays was originally written into the Unbreakable script, like in 2000, and they cut that shit from the role of the whole movie because, like, it was like we don't need him because he was
Maybe
like we don't
Joaquin
really-
Phoenix would have been the one to play him then if it came out
Yeah.
back then.
Yeah.
For sure. Yeah, it's
Because-
possible.
Yeah.
It was more of like a thing where it's like you have Glass and you have David Dunn, and it's like in a traditional superhero film or something, you would have another kind of antagonist to be the brute, and you touch on that later in Glass. But M. Night was like, we don't need that. It's more focused, so they just cut him, and then he had that idea, and he later used it. And I think the whole like David Dunn appearing at the end is like one of the only times that like one of those like cheesy like superhero ending things works for me, because I think the movie before it was just so good that it like everything kind of it just I don't know, that's one of those scenes that I think is silly, but I think it also kind of is a pump up scene.
Well, and
really
it's also 16 years later, which makes it even like funnier. That's like, oh
Yeah,
yeah,
that's
okay,
what's
yeah,
crazy.
that's the same thing.
well,
I think, yeah.
it's a weird thing where it's like he just kind of had that idea and then he kind of just revisits later,
Because
but it was
he
always
was so
kind of a
ahead
part
of the
of
curve with
story.
Unbreakable in
Yeah.
some ways, and now it's like now that superhero movies fucking dominated the culture, like 15 fucking world championships straight, like strangleholding the movie culture. He was like, wait, we can do
Well,
something with this actually.
Yeah, it's very much because I know he like mortgaged his house for the visit. Or
Yeah.
like,
Yeah, it was-
because he did it. The Last Airbender and after, like he's coming off this like critically like panned stretch.
No, actually,
So-
The Visit was his biggest, I think, like in terms of like because Visit was self-financed, and this is like starting at The Visit, he self-financed the rest of his movies.
That was the
all
first
way.
self-finance film.
Yeah.
wasn't it?
Yes, yeah, and now he
Because
self-finances all of his
He
movies.
was.
Yeah.
We talk about him in a hole and Lady in the Water, just like emotionally, but you have like 3 more pans after that. He's in a place where it's like, all right, fuck studios, right? I'm going to mortgage my house and put my money where my mouth is, sort of thing. So he
and
had
like
the
bet on
Visit.
myself.
And then it's like split is like, okay, we're 2016, superheroes at our all time. What's like a fire bet here? I have this like whole ass character I wrote in 2000. I can make a movie about this guy. And then there's that split. There you go.
That I
Yeah.
didn't know. I didn't know that character was already like
I didn't.
an idea that he had like
Yeah.
put pen to paper on already. That's very interesting because I truly like just knowing M. Night's like I guess like satirical prowess. I feel like I had gone into Split, and when I saw the ending, I was like, that ending was not there initially. He tossed that in just to say like "fuck you."
Well,
to, like, every
I
single
very
MCU
much think
movie.
because like I think a lot of people still think that. I think that is like a very normal thing to
Yeah.
think.
You
Because
also-
it is kind of just thrown in there at the end.
You also said it's like a fuck you. I think I will talk about it when we get to Glass, but like I think there's a, if you want to call it that, I think there's a bigger like kind of fuck you moment in Glass that I think is really cool. Like fuck you to like the
Oh, yeah.
general audience of like
Yeah.
superhero
Glass is-
fans. I think Glass does something really cool that I really really like.
Glass is so
Well,
interesting.
just- I mean,
Glass
just-
is like Glass is an
let's just get into
anti-superhero
Glass.
movie.
Yeah, that's what I was
Glass
thinking. That's what I
Glass
was
is an
gonna,
anti-superhero movie.
yeah, that's what I'm hinting at. Is that
Is
there's
Glass
like a real
Yeah, Glass
yeah,
is
there's
next,
a real
so-
big anti-superhero moment
Tell us,
in
tell
Glass.
us, Kevin.
Because there's like there's this whole the movie is just kind of building up to this epic like superhero fight scene that would occur in like this gigantic like building in this great location. And then the climax just happens outside of like the building that the whole movie's taking place in, really. Like they just never make it to this location, and it's such a like anti-superhero moment to like hype up this like huge event and then just have it not happen. Like
Yeah.
it still happens technically, but just not in the setting you'd expect and
Glass
not
is a-
looking the way you'd expect it to.
It's like we're building up an Oppenheimer to a bomb, but then when they push the button, the bomb just like fails and doesn't.
No, it
goes
literally
off.
is like that. Yeah, it's like
yeah.
Or no,
Oh,
it's
I
not
think
even.
that's
It's,
so cool.
no, it's like they're driving to the bomb site, and then there's a traffic stop, and they have to get out, and they're like, "Hold on, buddy." That's like more like what Glass is like.
Yeah. And then Oppenheimer like leaks the bomb information to like Russia, and then like Russia.
Yeah, and then they're like, the
bombs
bomb was.
US.
No, and then it's like they tell Oppenheimer the bomb was never real, actually. And then at the end of the movie, they're like, "Did you really think that the bomb was never real?" And yeah, Glass is cool.
Yeah.
That's a good movie.
Yeah, no,
Glass
Glass
is
is
like
awesome.
such
I
a-
like Glass more than Split, to be fair.
Glass
Really?
is my favorite of the three.
Yeah, Split is my
I-
least favorite of the three. Glass, I like Glass more.
I think
a
Glass
little
is
bit.
like such a mess, but I really like it at the same
It
time.
is.
That's kind of
It's
part of the
like
appeal.
such a
It
mess.
being a mess is kind of part
Messes
of the appeal.
are
to
more
me.
No, I
interesting.
like it. I like that it's a mess, but I think
Yeah.
for a general audience watching it, I can definitely see why Glass is the least favorite of the three.
Oh,
because
well,
it
it
I
makes
just think it's
sense
so-
for this
I just think
movie
it's so fun.
to come out when it did, and everyone, I think a lot of M. Night hate is more of like, hey, I want the movie to go this way, and he did
Yes.
not go that way, and now
Yeah,
I'm mad.
it doesn't
Yeah.
follow a normal pattern of what they expect
Well,
from a
he's-
general film.
Yeah,
That's-
well, it's like there's so much subversion in film, and there's so much like, subverting the viewer's expectations. But it feels like when M. Night does it, it's like, hey, you can't do that, man.
It's like, yeah. Glass is overhated. I know you guys probably all dislike Glass, right? Other
I
than
like
Seth,
it.
maybe.
I don't hate it. It's a 2.5 for me. I definitely don't hate it. I think I just came off of the high of Split just by how much I liked it.
Yeah, I think Split is much better. I've got a 3.5, but I prefer Split and Unbreakable.
Well, to
Yeah.
the folk that hold Glass a lot higher and Unbreakable a lot higher to me than me, do you prefer M. Night's little superhero trilogy or Raimi's Spider-Man trilogy?
Raimi.
Oh, Raimi.
Raimi's
Uh,
probably-
Raimi-
Although Unbreakable, I think is maybe the best of all four, to be honest.
Okay.
M. Night's
Right.
M. Night, I think, might be a better filmmaker than Sam Raimi, but I don't think there's a single human being on planet Earth that understands what a
Could've made.
superhero is more than Sam Raimi.
Yeah.
I think like Spider-Man 2 is better. I just
Yeah.
thought that.
Yeah, I think all three of those Raimi movies are kind of perfect. But I think Glass is really special. I think when we talk about James McAvoy's performance in Split, while he gets way more time and way more to do in Split, I think there's like some of his best scenes are in Glass.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
think that whole ending with Anya Taylor-Joy, it never
goat.
fails to like get me emotional. I think that scene is terrific. The last great like Bruce Willis performance, even though he doesn't get so much to do. This is like this last good movie.
Yeah, it is, and if you look at his filmography, it really is his last good movie. Like, not even.
Yeah, like he's done some
Yeah,
really,
and there's-
really bad stuff.
I don't know. I think this movie's really interesting. Talk about one location again. He uses one location to his strength, also to kind of subvert the narrative.
Yeah, one
Um,
location to a lot of people would argue weakness in Glass for people that don't like it,
Yeah.
at least. Like.
But it's like, hey, let's do a superhero movie in like 2018 and make it one location.
One location.
it's like
When like
man,
Infinity War, like
yeah. It's so
Same time.
anti like what It's interesting for the guy to make Unbreakable in 2000, to make a superhero movie, almost 2 decades later, and kind of now knowing like what the thing has like the entire genre, I guess, what has become, and use that to his advantage. I think this movie's really interesting, and is towards the top of my M. Night thing.
Tyler, do you have any Glass thoughts?
Yeah, so for me, Unbreakable is just like so high on the list. So just talking about the trilogy. So Unbreakable is so high on my M. Night list that I just love it so much that it'd be hard for any of them to top it. And Split, I just think James McAvoy's performance is so great in it that I think Glass, like it was gonna be hard for Glass to not end up in last place, but I don't think it's because I think it's a bad movie. I just hold the other two higher than it. Split's like barely above it. Unbreakable like clears the other two for me.
Yeah.
I
Split-
agree. With
Split
Unbreakable.
as my favorite, one of my favorite like sequences or scenes of an M. Night movie, which is like when McAvoy's crawling on the ceiling, punching out the light bulbs. I think it's like one of the coolest shots ever. That was just like so terrifying.
Yeah.
But yeah, Glass, to me, is very forgettable compared to Split and Unbreakable. Like I watched all three of them around the same time, and I feel like I could talk to you guys about scenes from Unbreakable and Split and dive into it. Whereas Glass, I just don't really have that same recall with. But yeah, I don't know. Like it's a 3-star for me, so it's a positive rating. But yeah, I think I just cared more for Unbreakable. Just clears the other two for me, and Split I think is just a little not carried by McAvoy's performance, but that's what like elevates it to a higher level for me. And then Glass, I just thought was like a very fine movie. I guess I just didn't really get any love from it.
And we're talking about eras. I think that now we are in the new
The
M Night
modern.
era. I would even say like
Prime era.
I would legitimately say like the way I would personally break it up, I would be like The Visit, Split, and Glass is one era, right? And now we're entering a new era with Old and Rock at the Cabin, and that new era is peak M Night Shyamalan.
There we go. There we
M
go.
Night is peaking.
Let's jump into that. So I'll start with Old for so Old is like I said for The Happening, like so the two movies that I kind of removed myself from because this is like the first movie I literally ever logged on Letterboxd. And
That's crazy.
for reference, like I watched Alien with my fiance like right after Old, and I gave Alien like a 7 out of 10. Then I rewatched it and gave it like a 9.9. So it's like when I never rated movies before. It wasn't like Cam who like already rated movies on a spreadsheet and then like input them into Letterboxd. Like I never like gave ratings. So like all my first like 50 reviews honestly just have like an asterisk by them because like I just rated because like Fargo and Alien I remember rating like low, but I like loved them. But I was like, oh, like I got to save my high ratings for other movies, and then like I rewatched them. Like
You were doing
no,
the
these are
Owen
like
before it was cool.
yeah, I was, but yeah, then I like rewatched some of the movies that I watched originally and had such a low score. I'm like, what am I doing? Like these are way better movies than I rated them credit for. So Old was like the first movie ever. I saw it in a drive-in theater, so it's like hard to get a full immersive experience. Yeah, because we went to drive-in when we lived in Dallas, there was a drive-in like 20 minutes from us, and every single weekend we would go, which is honestly like just such like it's not the best to be immersed in a movie, but one of the best like movie going like overall experiences. It's a dying form, but I freaking love drive-ins. But we saw this at drive-in, very first movie I logged and rated. So like, and I haven't watched it since. I need to rewatch it. So right now I have it at 2.5 stars. Realistically, I think it's probably more 3.5 because I did come away from it liking it, but I don't know. It was my first movie I ever logged and I haven't revisited it. So I'll kind of end the discussion there, but I did like Old. It was a definitely a fun movie at a drive-in to see with like an audience of people that reacted quite differently to when the movie ended. But
I think
I'll
Old's
kick it over to you
cool.
guys.
Old is my favorite M Night movie.
Is it your number one?
Wow.
Yeah, it is
How many
my
times have
number
you seen
one.
it? I've only seen it once.
I've only seen it once.
Oh,
Straight
wow.
up.
Crazy.
Really?
Yeah, I was gonna rewatch it a third time before
I-
the podcast, but I didn't get enough time.
Yeah,
to
I was going
squeeze
to do
it
the
in
same.
I
have
swear to
a
God,
right now,
because I knew there'd be
I think
some
I could
passion.
teach like a university film course just about this movie. Like this movie's fucking
Each
awesome.
week by week is it's like 5 minutes of the movie, just like
No,
week
yeah,
by
like-
week, each class.
Yeah, like
until
2
you get to
hours
the
on
end.
each scene. I'm not even joking,
Yeah.
dude. Like
I think
Yeah.
you could. I think like I don't know what this has on Letterboxd. I think it's like in the twos.
2.4
way too low.
right now.
I think the reception to this as like a modern film is everything wrong with the reception to everything now.
dude,
I think
people
this-
talk about this movie like it's a so bad it's good Tommy Wiseau shit.
Yeah,
That
which
that
is what I-
pisses me off.
think
That
it's,
actually
like,
grinds my gears.
Because what Douglas says, I think he could teach a class on this. I think this is like M Night. We talked about it earlier with The Happening. I think this is like again like an evolution of this like weird whatever he's cooking here, but I think he's cooking at like full power here. I think there's so much stuff going on, and I think when you talk about The Happening as like the inability to save your family from the earth and you know anything, just like whatever is going to happen to you. I think this is the inability to save your family from time, and I think we're getting an older M Night, and his kids are growing up. His daughter worked on this film. I think there is a lot of this of like, hey, he's getting older, and time is a real thing, and his kind of reflection of time, as well as like his reflection of having kids, because I think Lady in the Water is his kids are young, so that is his reflection of having young kids, and this is his reflection of his kids growing up, and now that he knows what that is, he can kind of translate that here. I think it's a really interesting, again, one location pretty much. We're on this beach this whole time. M. Night has kind of this interest in B movies. I think this is a very B movie plot. Like go on a beach, the beach makes you old, but I don't think that's a negative. I think that's just more of a style interest thing. I think B movie plot is probably the greatest plot you could ever give a movie. If you're going to make a narrative movie, I think you should make it as weird as possible. So I think Old is fantastic. I think
to the point of his like low Letterboxd scores, because for most of his movies you guys have said like, oh, it's criminal how low this Letterboxd score is, and this is absolutely not a criticism to M. Night. This is actually something I completely respect about him is he's never trying to appeal to the general public. He's never trying to hold your hand throughout his films. He wants you to think. He wants you to kind of stretch your knowledge on how you perceive his films. And to the general public, that's obviously a massive no-go, clearly. Like they don't want that. They don't want something like an After Earth or a Lady in the Water. And I fall into that category too. Like I understand what he's going for, but they just don't land for me. But in the case of Old, this is his, I think this is his, like, one of his most least accessible movies because of the one location, because of the fact that he's truly just not holding your hand throughout this movie. He's not telling you kind of what you should be thinking or how you should be perceiving this movie. It's kind of everyone's going to walk away from something like Old with a different perception of this film. And I think that sort of discourse on an M. Night film is what causes people to just very quickly, half star, 1 star, 1.5 stars.
Yeah.
Let me counterpoint though. With you think it's as least accessible. It's a beach that makes you old. That's cool.
Yeah. It's very accessible in how it's marketed. It's just like, this is the movie about a beach that makes you old.
Yeah,
and
we've talked about
go watch it.
But that's also the thing. The movie was marketed as just a very like standard, okay, this beach is going to make you old. And then people go into it not knowing that M. Night is not going to like guide you through this movie. He's relying on you to interpret his screenplay however you kind of want to interpret it, which is very opposite of the way this movie was marketed, I think.
Sure. Yeah.
All-time marketer, though, I think. We've talked about this before, but he is like the number one guy of being like, here's a sentence about my movie, and then now you're going to go want to see it. Like many of his
he gets people in the seats.
Yeah.
That's the benefit of self-financing, too. He doesn't have to worry about the bottom line for a studio.
All of these recent movies have made tons of money. Like most of his movies make money. The problem isn't that they don't make money. It is more of critical reception. But yeah, Old is one of those like, hey, this is what it's about. Go see it. I think it's really interesting.
I don't want to say a lot about Old, but because I'm not as high as Doug and Owen on this movie. But one thing I did want to say, even though it does sit kind of toward the bottom of my list, is just that like when I saw Old when it came out in theaters, I think the person that I was then and how I watched movies then compared to where I'm at now is like when I first saw it, it was exactly at that point where a lot of these things that George was complaining about mostly like with like the dialogue and all of that stuff, like that immediately stood out to me. And that's like exactly how I watched this movie the first time I saw it with my friend. Like we laughed the whole time and we were like, this movie is ridiculous and it sucks. And like, why is everybody talking like that? And now after revisiting it, and especially after watching his whole filmography and just kind of like, I guess just like my taste changing in general, but especially just like how I view how he makes movies and like what his goals are. I'm like, it's still not high on my list, but I've definitely started to come around on it more where I'm like, this stuff doesn't really bother me anymore. And now I watch it and I'm like, oh, this is pretty interesting. It just like kind of falls toward the bottom because a lot of why Doug and Owen like this movie, like when I go back to his ideas stuff, is just not, it's just not one of the ideas that I care about the most, like aging and all that stuff. I'm like, this is cool, but I think a lot of like The Happening that I was very passionate about, I'm like, that's stuff that I get more invested in. But this is kind of the movie that I've come around on the most.
With Old, I think that there is one like scene. It's pretty brief in the movie, but there's like one part of the movie that kind of sums up what I love about M. Night Shyamalan and kind of like what I love about the movie Old. And it's pretty early on. It's when they go into the hotel. They check into the hotel, right? They get into their hotel room, and it's obviously, the parents are having problems, but the kids like don't know about the problems, right? And the camera is on like a dolly outside of the hotel room, like looking in through the windows of like the porch, right? And the camera is like swaying back and forth rolling back and forth and creating these borders of artifice where the window stills would be separating like the parents and separating the kids from the parents, and it's so, to me at least, I watched that and I'm like, this is like genius level filmmaking. Like this is like, this guy's operating on a fucking plane like nobody else is on. When I look at like stuff like that and how it, like, the shots are compositioned or the shots are composed. Anyways, that's old.
George, what do you give Old?
I give it a 2.5. But again,
Oh, that's high.
yeah. I never been.
I really thought you were about to
No,
say 1.
no. I've never been like a glorified old hater the way I am with like The Happening and Lady in the Water.
Okay.
And Seth, you give it a 3, right?
Yeah, 3. I like it. It's not something I have huge feelings about. Like Kevin, it's not a topic that I care deeply about, but I think it's cool.
Yeah. Well, then that brings us to his latest film, Knock at the Cabin. Obviously came out in like February this year, early 2023.
Early one,
Early.
And stars Dave Bautista, stars Ron from Harry Potter, Ron Weasley.
Yo, you gotta do him like that.
Rupert Grint.
It's just funny. Like I was bummed out that he was killed off, so I was like, damn, I wanted to see more Rupert.
Spoilers.
Yeah.
Spoilers.
There it is. There it is.
Yeah.
But,
this is a very new movie, and we're gonna spoil it.
Yeah. So yeah, this came out early this year, and for me, honestly, like weirdly enough, like for me, this is the most by the book it felt for me for Knock at the Cabin. Like this is a movie, like when I was watching, I was like, I feel like the next scene's gonna go like this, and then it went like that, and then the entire movie went like that, and then it ended. I was like, that's kind of just exactly how I expected it to go. So like I was a little disappointed from that front. I still liked it. I think I gave it a 3.5 star. So I still liked it. I just wasn't blown away by it. I just felt like it kind of went exactly as I expected it to. And then I know it's based off a book called Cabin at the End of the World.
I'm gonna say, have any of you guys read it, or are you aware of the book?
I'm
aware of it.
Yeah, he changed basically the entire ending of the book, but the first 2/3 of it are mostly an adaptation. And then he kind of does the opposite pretty much of the ending. But again, I didn't read the book and have like an attachment to it. I did think the book's ending was interesting, like reading up on it, but yeah, for me, Knock at the Cabin was good. I thought the performances were really great. Camera work was awesome in this.
Some of the shots in this are absurd.
Yeah,
best shot of the year. The the one with the
axe. Or no, the one with the reflection.
Yeah, next to it.
Oh, yeah, that's cool.
Yeah.
That shot is that's what I mean when I'm like, this guy's operating on a different fucking level. That shit is crazy.
I just don't think it's silly to see him always like at the bottom of like lists or whatever, because I really don't think there's many people working today that are this talented,
especially visually. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
But I need someone to enlighten me. Like, why did I think, like, what am I missing? Because I just thought this was so cookie cutter for me.
So passionate about this movie.
Yeah, let's hear it.
It's not at the very top of my ranking, but I think when I rewatch this one, I'm gonna be like, this might be my favorite one, because I recently had a lot of discourse about it, and I remember I'm not gonna get into the details of the conversation. Okay. I was talking to somebody, and they said that they hated this movie. And then I sent them like a passionate 5-minute voice message about why I loved it. And mid voice message, I like had to stop myself from crying because of how much I'm into this movie. And they never talked to me again. We haven't talked since, but,
was this like a date, perhaps?
Yeah, this is a dating app experience.
Oh, gotcha.
That is so fucking funny.
And to be fair, it's a little bit even more hurtful, because this was a dating app experience that wasn't going to lead to a date. She made it very clear that she just wanted to be friends, and even on a friendship level, she heard me talk about Knock at the Cabin, and
she was like, "No way, that's it. Yeah. I'm done with Kevin."
But no, I just I think some of the stuff that we talked about for his previous movies, obviously, like how much of an optimist he is and how emotional I find some of his movies. I just think he's like operating at the highest level in terms of that stuff in this movie, because it's just like, it's so Doug mentions the book, and I know that the book has a different ending than the movie, and I think that kind of explains why this is so good, because it shows M. Night as the optimist and as like this super empathetic person that he is, because it's just a movie about leaving the planet a better place for your children, which like to me is such a beautiful thing, because we see like I compared it to The Happening, obviously, like the climate change stuff. It's like people not really caring about the damage that's done to the planet, and to see an older generation actually take responsibility for what's going to happen to a younger generation, and specifically in this situation, it's a father-daughter relationship. It's just like so, yeah, I don't know. It's just really touching. Like it just makes me cry thinking about it. I'm like, that's so sweet.
I love the way that you look at an M. Night film, because I remember I had seen M. Night, I had seen Knock at the Cabin, and then like a week later was when it was released theatrically, and all of my coworkers had gone to see it. And I remember this so clearly. The first thing one of my coworkers said, because I had told him that I enjoyed Knock at the Cabin, and I'm kind of like right there with Kevin in terms of like, if I rewatch this movie, this could very well jump to like my number one M. Night in the ranking. I really did like it a lot. But my coworker looks me dead in the eyes and goes, "Bro, I don't know how you like that movie. I feel like I just watched a Reddit thread come to life in the worst way possible."
I had almost the exact same experience. I had literally almost the exact same experience. I have like a friend.
In my head, I'm like, oh God, am I really about to like defend M. Night for 10 minutes and like talk to him about like what like M. Night is actually trying to say in his films, or should I just leave it at Reddit thread come to life?
Yeah, well, that's what I learned, is that getting too passionate about these movies, from my voice message experience, I'm like, getting too passionate about these movies is maybe not a good idea. Maybe we just need to like let people who hate on him just like kind of
for Kevin, Doug, and Owen, is Knock at the Cabin all of your number ones of the year right now?
No, it's not my number one of the year.
I think
It's mine though.
It's Owen's, I believe.
No.
It is Owen's, yeah.
Okay.
It's not mine.
Not
Is yours
There
Oppenheimer?
are,
Kevin?
believe it or not.
Yeah, mine is Oppenheimer. Mine's
Yeah.
Oppenheimer.
Our directors I like more than M. Night, shockingly.
Yeah.
Yeah, anything with Tom Cruise is gonna probably take precedent.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, you already know, brother.
Seth, where did Knock the Cabin land for you? In
This
terms
year?
Of in terms of your M. Night rankings.
Oh, into the so it's fifth. So again, this is a 4-star of me. I think it's really, really good. I really enjoyed this, and I defend this quite a lot. I think this could be really high. I actually think in my year ranking as well, I think it's in the top kind of 7 or 8 ish. But I've not seen as much this year as a lot of.
It's number 5 for the year for me right now.
For the year.
Yeah, number 5 for the year.
Mine's around the same. I think it's like 7.
1 for the year, 3 for M. Night in total.
Okay.
3 for M. I didn't know it was that high for you.
Yeah, I think
think
this
great.
movie
Yeah, I
is
think it's great.
really good.
Yeah, same.
Prime era. M.
Yeah, I think we're really operating in like a high
Yeah,
level
actually.
where I don't see him like stopping. I'm
Bro,
so
his
excited
next
for
movie
Trap.
might be like one of the like top
Well, it's like-
250
It's the
potential
movie
put on the
theater
sighted
one,
sound
right?
list.
No, it's
No,
a
it's concert. Yeah.
Concert.
So
Yeah,
he has 2 movies this decade. Both of them are in the top 10 of this decade for me. I think Knock at the Cabin is really interesting because I know, Tyler, you said it was kind of cookie cutter, and then George mentioned, I think, in Old about like not holding your hand, and I think a lot of people I saw complain that this movie held your hand too much.
That's what I like hate
Yeah.
to admit this, because it does make me sound like a crazy like film bro and like general audience member, but I think that's why I like Knock at the Cabin as much as I do, because it's not like typical like M. Night fuckery, I guess. And I don't say it in a bad way.
I know.
Like the entire movie, I'm like, what is he gonna do? What is he gonna do to piss me off? Because like for the first like hour 15, I'm like, there's no way I'm liking an M. Night movie as much as I like this movie.
Yeah.
So I'm like, what is he gonna do to ruin this experience for me?
you
And he never
guys-
did anything.
You guys know what the book ending is, right?
No, I do
because
not.
I think George, if the movie ended, which it never, if an M. Night movie would never end like this, and that's why,
no
because he
shot.
wasn't going to. Okay, some inside baseball about this movie, real quick. M. Night was only going to produce. This was like his production company was going to make this movie because his production company got the rights to the book, got the film rights to the book, right? And he was going to produce it. And I think it was like he might have been a co-writer, he might have just been doing passes over the script or whatever, but he wasn't like the main writer. And he wasn't going to direct. He was just going to produce it. And then like some stuff happened. I think somebody approached him and was like, "You should really direct this movie. This seems like something you would do." And he was like, "Yeah, I mean, I really like some of the ideas here." But then part of him directing it was saying like, I have to completely rewrite it. I have to rewrite it because the movie is too pessimistic. The end of the book, the daughter dies. Then at the end of the book, they kill the daughter, and then nothing happens, and then the world ends.
Yeah.
That would have been the M. Night fuckery that removed me from the movie.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But he would never do that.
Yeah,
he would never do that.
That's
It's way
it's
too
so
pessimistic.
anti what he's all about.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's interesting. I did not know the book ended like that. That's kind of wild.
So
Yeah.
Lars von Trier, isn't it, Doug? That's
Yeah,
the
like
part. Yeah.
that's like fucking
Yeah,
like
Lars von Trier
nymphomaniac.
is not
Li- Yeah.
Exactly how it's done with that. Yeah, it's interesting.
Yeah, no, but unlike the cookie cutter stuff, I think it's like, I don't know, I'm just so removed from even thinking about stuff like that. I think, it's like I don't really care, I guess, where it's going, or what it. I don't know. It's more of, I think.
But again,
Batista's
I
really
don't say
strong.
like cookie cutter or like
No.
he's holding
No,
your
I know,
hand
I
in
know.
like a bad way. But like just from
Yeah.
like my perspective as someone who never like has felt attached to an M. Night film
Yeah.
the way you guys do. It's just it's
No,
it's something
for
I
sure.
enjoyed watching. Like watching
But I know
him
a lot
just
of
deliver
people
something
did
like
have that as like a negative, and I don't know. I'm not really worried about him. But I don't think he's holding our hand necessarily in this one as much as people would like to kind of point out.
It is
because
funny
I think,
though.
yeah.
Go on. Yeah, go on.
Oh, I think there's just like a lot of stuff really in the forefront, and there's a lot of like it's easy to follow, right? But I just think there's so much more to the film than what is at the front. So I think this is a movie that you could very easily watch and get like the very surface level
Enjoyment.
idea of it, whereas some of the other movies people could be a little more confused. But I just think there's a lot more to this movie, and I think he's kind of operating at this like crazy level where he can both hold the hand of someone that needs it, but also like kind of have this explosion in the back room.
But it
I
is
think
funny though how
yeah.
like the same people who are saying he held your hand too much with this one, it was basic whatever, the usual criticism,
Yeah.
are the same people who criticize him for doing things other filmmakers don't do. And I think
Right.
Which is
it's
why
really
I think
interesting.
if Knock at the Cabin was released under like a different name, it'd
No, I
probably
said
be
that in my
more.
review.
It's just because it's like I think at that point when we're like, oh, he's holding my hand here, he's not holding my hand here. It's like, all right, come on, like this is really not. Like, what are we talking about?
I wanted to tie it back to Tyler C. Whitmore over here, because he asked like, oh, like what am I missing? And I think with Knock at the Cabin specifically, I think that it's like to really get out of this movie, you just have to have fucking loads of empathy for these characters. It's like if you don't have loads of empathy for these characters, and I think that the movie's doing like a lot to help you feel that way from like the way that it's shot, where like you feel every fucking inch of Dave
And the
Bautista's
cast as
face,
well. I think
like
Ben
in the
Olsen
cast. Yeah,
was incredible.
The
He
cast is
really helped
wonderful,
them.
but there's so many close-ups.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, definitely.
I think Dave is great. I love
There's
him.
one
It
thing
was so
about-
good. We spoke about this yesterday. Yeah, he's really good.
There's one thing about M. Night's like the way he shoots his films that I want to get your perspective on, because I've noticed in a lot of his filmography, there are very interesting shot selections where like, and I'm gonna do it with my camera, not my camera, but like the person's like down here off to the side.
yeah.
Like they're never like the focal point of, and I noticed it in The Happening. I noticed it in Lady in the Water when I watched it. Same thing with The Village. There's very like interesting shot selections where like anyone who doesn't understand M. Night's filmography will look at that and be like, that is a bad shot. Like the man, like there was one shot in Knock at the Cabin. I remember watching this when I saw it in theaters because my first thought was people are gonna hate that shot. It was literally a shot of Rupert Grint and like half of his face was like here. Like out
Like
of
off
the
camera,
screen.
right.
Yeah, like
Yeah.
off
Yeah.
camera.
I know what shot you're talking about. That's a cool shot.
Yeah,
But, like,
yeah,
what-
that shot's
what-
pretty awesome.
What is the point of like those types of shot selections? Like, why is he like limiting like his like I guess characters in the movie?
I can't speak for M. Night specifically. I think that, but I think that in general, like, and obviously, like, each individual shot has its own meaning, right?
Yeah.
But I think that in general, overall, I think M. Night, and we've kind of like alluded to this a couple of times over this podcast episode, but I think M. Night is very much like a spatially focused filmmaker, but like spatially not in just like the space of the frame, which he is also that, but I mean like the physical space in which the narrative takes place, where like the locations are really important. I mean, we talked even like the movie he just wrote, Devil. That's a movie that takes place in a fucking elevator, right?
Yeah,
And
he's
it's like
amazing
it's all,
at like utilizing like rooms and like just
Yeah.
Yes.
and Knock at the Cabin. That's like it's the movie's called Knock at the Cabin, right? It's all about this fucking cabin that they're staying at. Old is the beach that makes you old. It's all on this
Yeah.
beach. It's like
You
all of
can-
his movies are all about these locations. Like these
Right.
locations are always like the main character of the movies, really, in most of
Right.
his movies, at
It's
least.
got to the
You
point
could picture
where-
the exact space you're
Yeah,
in.
it's
Yeah.
one of
Like you
we're
have an
looking
understanding.
less
you
at
could,
the
like, map
characters
it out.
and where they are. I think that's like one of the things where I gravitate towards him, and I one of like my biggest gripes with like modern filmmaking is like the overuse of shallow focus and like the loss of like,
Last Voyage of the Demeter. Like,
oh my god! Even I was watching a movie yesterday, and I like the movie, and I think it's shot fine. But there's just little scenes where there's shallow focus that just annoys me because I think we're so focused on the actors and what they're doing, and it's way less focused on like where they are and what the environment is and what people are doing in the background.
that's a big issue I have with fucking Ahsoka too, bro. They use like that, what's that bullshit called? The volume,
Yeah.
and like also these new stills from the Percy Jackson show that's gonna
It's
come out on
just
Disney Plus.
blurry.
Yeah, in the Percy Jackson shows, it's really bad. Where it's like they use the volume, and it's obvious that it's just like some brain of bullshit they throw up on the volume for the actors to put in front of, and it's like there's no thought going into the location at all. It's like
Yeah, I always just think about it like painting stuff. I'm always just gonna bring it back to painting, but it's like I think like if you were gonna have a painting and you have two people in your painting, you're not gonna blur the background. Like you're gonna have like things in the background and there's gonna be meaning there, and then unless you're like it's just like a blank thing. But I don't know. It's like it really annoys me when you have two characters and then there's characters in the background and then they're just mush. Or it's just like you have character and then you have reverse shot, and it's just a guy, and then everything else is blurred.
A conversation with blurred in the background.
yeah.
I like where filmmakers will put something there and they want me to look there, but I don't like when they're grabbing my eyes and they're pointing me somewhere.
Placing it exactly.
I want to be able to explore the whole image, and I think there's a lot of that in M. Night where I can kind of just dance around in the image where I don't get it in some other filmmakers. That is like one of the biggest gripes I have with like movies is that'll really bother me is like shallow focus stuff.
Yeah,
Because I
Zack Snyder
wanna
fan
explore.
over here, by the way.
But
Talking
yeah,
about shallow
true.
focus.
I don't think the Army of the Dead stuff looks that well, but I don't know. That's another story for another day.
No, and the reason I asked that question is because there's that like one particular shot from The Happening where it's like one person is like here and then one person is on the complete other side, and like half of their faces are both in the screen, like here and here.
I would have
and
to
like
look at it.
all of the discourse is like this is an actual shot from this movie, and it's like okay, well it's an M. Night movie, so he's going for something,
Yeah.
but I understand why that may look like either just a lazy shot or a bad shot to like someone who just isn't familiar with M. Night as a filmmaker.
I want to talk about, just like briefly touch back on to what Seth brought up, which is the shot of the year. Maybe not just shot, maybe like the still, like the single like screen, like the screenshot of the year. From it's from Knock at the Cabin. That shot was in the trailer. That was like the fucking massive balls that M. Night has to put that shot in the trailer. That's so crazy, and it's so short. It's such a fucking like incredible, like insanely composed shot. It's like you like pause the movie and you look at it and you're like, what the fuck is going on here? Like this is crazy. And it's for like 2 seconds. It's so sick. It's so
that
amazing.
was one of those things where it happens so quick you can miss it in the theater. You can miss it, which is like it's like the coolest thing, and then it's like boom.
It's such a throwaway shot, but it's like the coolest shot ever.
Oh, it's so good.
Yeah. And that's how I feel about like these. That's why when I'm like prime M. Night is right now or in this era. It's because I think Old and Knock at the Cabin are these like very conceptual, like tight concept movies, right? But then also on top of it, they're so well shot where even like the worst shot in Old or Knock at the Cabin is better shot than like any fucking Gal Gadot Netflix bullshit. Like,
well, yeah, let's like I don't know. I wanted to kind of touch on this because we talked about it like the whole time, but even like with the shot selection and different thing, I think there's something like with M. Night and I think any filmmaker of this like quality. I think there's always like this level of like going to anything that he does is looking at it first that it is intentional, because I think there's a lot of weird talk about when M. Night does something and it's like, oh, that's not on purpose, that wasn't done on purpose, and there's like a treatment of like, oh, it's so bad it's good. But I think any shot where George was talking about those shots, I'm not remembering them entirely.
I'm literally trying to Google it right now.
Yeah, I know. It's like any shot where there's something where it's like, oh, that's interesting. I think there's always like a point of like, okay, so why is this the way it is necessarily? Because it's not like he like showed up and like said, all right, this guy's not in frame or something. So I think that is very interesting about what like everything that he does is very interesting. I think he's always working in this like interesting attempt at trying to do something different there.
To put a bow tie on this extended and thoughtful discussion on M. Night, let's just go around and do our rankings now, so what the order is. So I've seen 12 of his films, so starting from the bottom up. So in 12th, I have Last Airbender, 11th, Wide Awake, 10, The Happening, 9, After Earth, 8, Praying with Anger, 7, Old, 6, Glass, 5, Knock at the Cabin, 4, Lady in the Water, 3, Split, 2, Unbreakable, and 1, The Sixth Sense. And obviously I've not seen Signs, Visit, The Village yet. Those are only 3. Yes. George,
Good.
what's your rankings?
I've seen 13. I got Last Airbender at 13, The Happening at 12, After Earth 11, 10, Lady in the Water, Old at 9, Glass at 8, The Village at 7, Unbreakable at 6, and then Knock at the Cabin, Signs, The Sixth Sense, Split, and The Visit.
All right. So I'll wait for Seth to come back, so we'll go to Kevin.
Cool. Yeah, I've seen 14 of them. I have Wide Awake and Last, then The Last Airbender, then The Visit, then After Earth, then Old, then Lady in the Water, then Split, then Glass, then Unbreakable, and then in my top 5 I have The Sixth Sense, Knock at the Cabin, The Happening, The Village, and Signs is my favorite.
Okay. Seth, we'll bounce back up to you. We skipped over you because you stepped away.
Yeah,
What's your
that's
M. Night
okay.
ranking from lowest to highest?
Lowest, highest. So I have After Earth lowest, Lady in the Water second lowest, The Happening third, Old fourth, The Visit. Then I have Glass, The Village, Knock at the Cabin, Sixth Sense, Split, Unbreakable, and Signs at the very, very, very top.
Okay. We all have such diverse rankings so far.
Yeah,
John.
this is a
Yeah,
mess.
this is how our podcast
I'm
went as
about to
well.
blow
We
up
were
this
just
thing.
yeah.
It wouldn't be fun if we all came on here and we're like,
Yeah.
yeah, he's sick.
Yeah, he's dope ass fibers. Mine is I have at 13th place I have The Last Airbender. Then at 12th I have Praying with Anger, and then I have Lady in the Water. Then I have The Visit. Then I have Split. Then Glass. Then The Sixth Sense. Then After Earth. Then Unbreakable. Then The Happening. Then Knock at the Cabin, then The Village, then Signs, then Old at number 1.
What do you rate The Last Airbender? Sorry if you said it and I missed it.
I give it 2 stars.
Okay.
Owen,
All right.
your ranking.
Oh, fuck. I got 13, so I haven't seen Praying with Anger. And
Owen's got all of them at 1. They're all tied for 1.
Yeah. We have The Last Airbender, The Visit, The Sixth Sense, Signs, Unbreakable, The Village, Split, The Happening, and then my top 5 is After Earth, Glass, Knock at the Cabin, Old, and Lady in the Water.
Like the polar opposite to the general audience. I like that.
Yeah, all of us were just all over the place, which is great. That was a very fun, like, long extended discussion on M. Night, diving deep. That's like our first, easily the deepest we've ever dove.
Did we all give our
director.
rankings?
Yeah.
Yeah, we did. You skipped out where we went over.
Yeah, you
2 weeks
missed.
while you were gone. But
I was gone for like 20 seconds.
but let us know down below if you want to see us do another deep dive into directors' filmographies like this. Like we've done rankings before, but we've never gone this deep into one, and it was honestly fun, like going through a whole director. And I'd definitely be down to do it for other directors. I was foolish creating the outline for this episode because I was like, M. Night might only take us like an hour. I got to add in some stuff.
We've been talking.
We're gonna skip right over the other stuff we have planned. So just for fun, just Owen. I have some ratings. I'm just read them off. We're not going to discuss them at all. I'm just going to read them off. Owen rates Raiders of the Lost Ark a 1.5 star, Inception a 1.5 star, Wolf of Wall Street 1.5 star.
He's just George's favorites.
John Wick 1 and 2 a 1 star. Yeah, to be fair, like I was prepping for this probably like 1:30 last night, and Owen and George were like my first 2 letterboxes I was comparing, and I was gonna do for everyone to have like head to head, but I was like, I'm recording a podcast in literally 3.5 hours. I need to go to bed. And then so Doug rates 10 Cloverfield Lane a 1.5 star, where Seth rates it a 4 star.
Sorry,
You don't
my
like
bad.
that?
I don't
Doug
like it.
Doug
that's
rates
disappointing.
no. There's no allowed to explain yourself. We're just reading through. Doug rates Boyhood a 2-star. Tyler rates it a 10 out of 10. Everyone hates The Whale but me. Owen, well, I said Owen, but all of you hate Bullet Train.
Oh,
and then
I do
all of
not
you
hate
like-
Bullet Train.
Not all of you as the
George doesn't
others.
hate
They're the
The Whale.
others.
George, did you
The
hate,
others.
Did I what,
Yeah.
Seth?
did you hate The Whale? Sorry.
I haven't seen The Whale.
Oh shit! Yeah, sorry.
Yeah, that's like that. And the
Therefore,
Fable.
he hates it.
Yeah, The Whale and the Fable.
Therefore, yeah, George is like out on The Whale.
And then, of course, to end off, Skinamarink, all three of you down below. All three of you really like it.
Love it.
I was
Yeah,
lumping
I
you all
love
in,
it.
but I think all three.
Yeah.
All
I
of us
think I
are very
would've liked
positive.
it.
I'm varying degrees of very positive, but we're all very positive.
I think
Like,
I would have liked if it was a short film. I'll just say that.
I said,
Well, he has
there's
a
no
short film
explaining
called
yourself,
Heck.
Seth.
which is a short
sorry.
film. It's Skinamarink, but it's shorter.
But yeah, so that's our episode.
They should have made Skinamarink longer.
No.
3.5 hours.
Yeah, bro.
True.
Let me get the.
Also, this podcast is longer than any M Night movie. Remember?
Well, he doesn't have any over 2 hours, does he? Because
Any?
Really?
No.
I think he has
Also-
one that's like
Older
2 hours
2
and 5 minutes. Maybe.
I think all his movies are pretty short.
Yeah.
Older than 2 hours.
but-
oh, Last is over 2 hours. That's the one.
Okay. But before we sign off, you can find all these guys on TikTok, Letterboxd, Looks Like a Movie podcast. All their links is going to be right in the description down below. You can see their ats for what they pinned at the beginning of the show on the screen right now. But all their links to their podcast and their social medias are in the description down below. As you saw from this discussion, like we all have very different like takes and interpretation on films. I think it's a very fun discussion. So let us know what you all thought about it. Before we wrap up, shout out to our Patreon people that are executive producers. So we got Seven Mod Jeffy, Alexander Biscardi, Ben Leggy, Ben Hansey, Brody Young, Cody Whitney, Dakota Buckner, Dean Cotamanidis, Dylan Chip, Ferdinando Ford, Jimmy O'Connor, Jordan Gagg, Josh Hines, Casper, new one, Luke Deerhog, another new one, Raheem Bate, Reese David, Remy Walker, Rocco 1.0, Robert, Leo Gislason, Sean Morales, Stefan Johnson, Trey Artsy, Will Kim, and Zach Graves. Shout out to all of you for being executive producers of the podcast. Again, on Thursday, we'll be uploading our draft of Denis Villeneuve / Quentin Tarantino duo directed films. And then on Friday, we'll be doing our Edge of Tomorrow review. So thank you guys, you three, Kevin, Doug, Owen, for joining for this
Appreciate
lengthy
you
podcast.
guys.
Thanks
I know
for
that
having me.
the NFL
thanks for having
season,
us.
yeah, for sure. No, it was a blast. We got to do another deep
Brian De
dive.
Palma ranking, please.
That would be a great one for us all.
I
to
will
do
say
together.
that would be very long.
7-hour episode.
That would be
Brian De Palma-
You're talking about the
Brian
longest
Palma top
episode in
10.
ReelTok
Brian De Palma
history.
top 10.
Yeah.
We should pencil in a Russo brothers deep dive.
We could do
I'd
Brian
love
De
to be on
Palma-
that. I would love
we
to
could
be
do
on
Brian De
that.
Palma the way you guys normally rank, just like
Yeah.
Oh yeah,
do
true.
that.
Yeah. Good
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, the NFL season's kicking off in 2 minutes, so
Yeah,
in 2
I
minutes.
know that's where I'm about to run to. But
Same.
great episode today. Thank you all for listening to the whole thing, and we will see you in the next one.